Well, good afternoon, everyone. So very glad to have you here with us in Advocacy Arena this week. I want to welcome you back to our live chat where we gather to inform and inspire civic engagement each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 12 p.m. Central Time. And today we're going to focus quite a bit on DEI because I feel like it's a common thread that is running through so much of the legislation and the political activity that's occurring in our country and certainly in my state. I am going to talk quite a bit about it. And I know that, Tennessee is just one state. It's my state, but I talk about it because, as I've said multiple times, it's like we're seeing, the roots of fascism blossoming and taking hold in real time here in my state. And I know it's not the only one, but it's the one that like I know best. It's the one that I'm affected by personally. So I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about what was really a very agonizing week for me in that respect. But it's not all doom and gloom. And that is what I would like us to focus on is, not get stuck in the agonizing moments and that state of despair, but to organize. So we're going to speak to that some. And before I get started and just kind of give a review of some of the things that have occurred here. And of course, we'll talk about some of the things happening nationally and internationally. I want to give my fabulous co host an opportunity to say hello. And I'm going to beg you guys to forgive me because I have been attacked by the seasonal allergy gremlins. My throat this morning is having a lot of issues with that. I'm breathing, but it's spring and, these things come with it. And I do love spring and fall, but unfortunately, they don't tend to love me. So I am just going to push through it and ask you guys to bear with me and be forgiving if my voice gives out. But we're here and so thankful that you have joined us. So I'm going to give Soul Sister an opportunity to say hello and we'll get our conversation started.
Good afternoon, and Miss D. I know exactly what you mean because I suffer from the same issues. So we are in the same boat today, and that is okay. I just want to say here in this recorded space that this bird app is not real life. I know that we say it in this space. I know we say it in other spaces, but it is glaringly obvious to me when I go in other spaces where people are speaking on politics and especially this upcoming election. And, people within the Black community, which have a myriad of different opinions, and some of them are so drastically different than mine that it shocks me because these are not the conversations that I'm having with family and friends in my real life. And so it surprises me when they say that this is how their community feels. And I have to remember that everyone is not in the same place that I am in regards to how I approach things, how I look at things, and how I engage. And I think that's an important word. How I engage in politics that are happening locally, statewide, and federally. And so, while I think it's important when you're in these different groups, whether it is a woman's group, whether it is a Hispanic community, whether it is our Black community, whatever community it is, it's like, I love rocks. I'm not sure. Whatever community you find yourself in, and the politics seem to be vastly different than yours. It's really easy to say, they're ignorant. And a lot of times, I think that that opinion may apply, but then again, they may also just be so disengaged and so caught up in the psyop without even acknowledging it because somehow they think that they are above it or they are smarter than the game that is being played to encourage these culture wars. And so while it's important that you have conversations within your community to say, this is what I want to see happen, and this is how I think the country will be able to move forward better. You have to remember that you have to step outside that community because the world doesn't exist just in that realm. And the only way to accomplish anything is through coalition. There has not been a movement that has been successful in this country. And I'm talking about civil rights, women's labor without coalition. And that seems to be in the spaces that I have found myself in by mistake. Thinking that I'm coming in talking about one thing and finding out the space is completely different is that's one thing that I've noticed that they don't want to move beyond that circle, and that is detrimental. It's unrealistic, and it explains why they don't see any progress towards their issues because they're only talking to themselves. And if we could just talk to ourselves and get anything done, then it would be done. But that's not how it works because sometimes you don't have the keys to the kingdom and you don't have the right guide to the path for success unless you step outside that circle. So, that being said, I do want to give you a little bit of a union update. And I will be putting this article and several others up in the nest. But, the UAW has a huge campaign going on in Tennessee at the Chattanooga Volkswagen plant. And it's reaching major levels right now because the vote for unionization is nearly upon us. Workers will vote to unionize April 17th through 19th. And in this article, there were at least three different workers interviewed. And I'm going to talk just briefly, or maybe it won't feel so brief to you, but just give you a bit of a rundown. Isaac Meadows, he's a worker at the VW plant, and he's only got a year under his belt. And he was featured in this article, and he said he didn't have any complaints about the job per se. Actually, he enjoyed the job, but he wanted to see better pay, more control over his schedule, when he could take breaks. That was actually written in black and white, when he could take breaks or work weekends. But mostly he wanted a voice at the company. And right now, the UAW has a super majority at the plant with signed cards of people of the workers pledging their support to join the union. And for those of you who are not sure what supermajority means, that means for the UAW, by their standards, by our standards, it's roughly 70% or more of the workers at the facility. So, the UAW is concentrating a lot of its organizing efforts in southern states like Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina. And so there's another worker, Ronald Terry. He works at the Hyundai plant in Alabama. He's been working there since 2014, and he's supporting the UAW's organizing drive because he wants to see wages that are much better because his are far below other auto workers nationally. And he wants to see fewer last minute schedule changes and more sick days. So there seems to be a theme running between workers at these foreign transplants. And you can see it playing out. And it's no secret that unions, and that includes the UAW, haven't had a lot of success in the South. And, a lot of labor experts are saying that, a victory at Chattanooga is the best bet for the UAW and that it will be like a windfall for the other plants in the South. And, the South has been historically anti-union. They give companies the promise of lower pay, and no union presence. That's one of their selling tactics of bringing in business. And these tactics date back as far as the 19th century. That's when they first started demonizing the unions and characterizing them as outside forces from the North. Giving them that carpetbagger type of narrative, and it has worked. So many Southern states encourage this bias to attract business and often offer large sums of money, large subsidies. For example, Volkswagen received more than $800 million to locate themselves in Tennessee, and that's from the state, local, and federal money. That's the total of that. And then state legislators also feel that they could have a say by giving these subsidies. They want to have a say in how these businesses are run. So even if a company says that they are going to remain neutral throughout the unionization organizing drive, a lot of times state legislators will insert themselves and put pressure on the companies. They feel like, I'm paying you this money and I'm paying you this money to keep the union out. And that makes everything just nasty. It- they understand that a unionized workforce is an educated workforce, and discrediting unions and keeping them out of the South is seen as job security for these Southern Republicans. So, especially since unions typically support Democrats. So that should be noted that all states in the South have right to work laws. And if you don't know what that means that the union has to provide protections and services, but the members don't have to pay due. And the people who provide those services for the protect, that's how they get paid, through the dues. I don't know if people really understand that connection, but so without the dues, that's a lot of strain on the bottom line for most unions, which means that a lot of times the staff might have to shrink, and then the service is not as adequate or as quick to respond, and that causes more issues. It's like a circle jerk. So it's pretty typical that these corporations often put these facilities in small towns as well, and workers are grateful for this steady income in this places that, don't offer many other employment opportunities. And then the companies will keep local charities and communities happy with large donations and community support. And so they think, oh, this is great. Nobody really wants to rock the boat. And so that is also a level of discouragement for unions to be prevalent in these places or existing in these places at all. So the UAW has dedicated $40 million dollars over the next 2 years to organizing efforts. But, it should be noted that places like Volkswagen have spent upwards to $14 million. Oh no, I'm sorry, not Volkswagen, but other places. Other places have spent upwards to $14 million to keep the union out. So that's just one company. These consultants that come in to have these one-on-one meetings or these group meetings are paid upwards to $3,000 a day. They take that money and they are geeked about it. They take it and they run. It's like selling your soul, but that's what they do, and they have no problems with it. And really, sometimes I wonder if it would be less expensive for them to just let the union in. I mean, my goodness, $3,000 a day. And yet, the whole point is so that they don't have to pay workers more, they don't have to have the union, and they don't have to agree to any contract. They could say and promise, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that." Just keep the union out. But there are many times that other than a wage increase, a lot of those work conditions don't change at all. And that's a big problem, a huge problem for the workers, not for them, obviously. So while nearly 70% of the country views unions favorably, only 10% of U.S. workers belong to a union. There was a woman also interviewed. Her name was Yolanda Peoples, 13-year Volkswagen veteran. She's been there from nearly the very beginning of this plant opening in Chattanooga. And she supported the UAW on its two previous organizing campaigns. And she definitely supports the current one. And she says one of the things that she thinks the union might have gotten wrong is coming in and pushing too fast. Too hard, too fast, without giving workers an opportunity to really see the benefits of the union, what the union was really about, and what it could really mean for their facilities. But what has changed and what has brought about a lot of encouragement for workers and is probably really helping their current organizing drives, of course, are the 2023 contract negotiations. So hopefully we're going to see victory. But, you know, keep your fingers crossed. If you're in the area, support them however you can. And I guess we'll find out after the 19th of this month. So that's the biggest labor story that we have right now, but there are some other ones, and I will put those up in the nest. But thank you guys so much for being here this afternoon. You could have been anywhere, but you're spending it with us. And I look forward to this conversation because I know it's going to be good as always.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for, again, diving into the intricacies and the nuances of unions, their importance. And it just so happens your story today is centered here in my home state. So I really do appreciate your background, your expertise in this area, and that you are able to share that with us because it is so very important. And we do have a couple of speakers up. And again, for those of you who have come, I apologize to the room already. I'm dealing with some allergies, so my throat, my voice is probably not the best. And I am also just kind of recovering from what was a very agonizing week politically for me as a Tennessean because of so many of the things that occurred here. And it's much like when we get the SCOTUS rulings. We're coming close to the end of our legislative session. So all of their awful bills come out. And I think it's made national news, but the vacating, the disbanding of the board of TSU, which is Tennessee State University, it is a public HBCU. It's a land grant university. And there are two here. The other one is UT, but it is not an HBCU. And what has been historically the problem is, amongst many others, is that TSU has never ever in the history of funding been given the funds that they asked for or that they needed. And there is, like empirical data and evidence to show this. While UT, which is a university, again, on the same par, really, as TSU, has gotten everything that they've asked for in their budget. And the issue that they use to pass this atrocious legislation was the university funds, of course, being mismanaged, and they rode and harped on the president, Glenda Glover, so much so they had her appearing before various investigative sessions or whatever, until finally she just relented because it was an attack similar to Claudine Gay's. Until she finally decided to resign, which her resignation will be effective this June. She wanted to get through this semester. So essentially, what happened here was that they were attacking her, the university, claiming mismanagement of funds and various other things. And it kind of all started, they were angry because she actually increased the registration to the school. Now, that shouldn't be a bad thing to have more people coming to the school. But in part of that, they also, with the increased registration, they encountered housing problems because they had so many students. But you have a couple of things going on here. One, they were never and have never in their history been given the funds that they needed. So they have not really had the money to upgrade the dormitories and the infrastructure to support these students. And this isn't a new problem. It was, I mean, my mom is an alum of this school. Many of my classmates, I didn't graduate from there, but I attended classes there. And housing has always been a problem, you know, the availability of housing and the condition, because it's always been underfunded. But now, in addition to these, that existing problem, we have Nashville, which is has undergone and it's still going through some severe gentrification, which has brought in a lot of outside people, a lot of outside companies, and it has driven the housing, the price of housing up to unaffordable heights just for regular folks. And this is also a state who has refused to raise the minimum wage. So you have people who have moved here, let's say from California, who come with their California salaries, and they come into Tennessee, and they are able to buy a lot more, do a lot more. Their money goes a lot further here. The landlords and other people know it. So they start raising the prices to accommodate these new people coming in with these, you know, commensurate salaries for, you know, the cost of living and other stuff. And it just goes a lot further here in Tennessee. Meanwhile, the people who have lived here all their lives and have, you know, many of them are not part of unions because we're also a right to work state, which is also inviting to a lot of companies here, which they use to entice them to come here. It sets up a bad situation, and that is what occurred with the all of the new students here. They had to put them up in temporary hotels and things like this. So they again like tried to make this the fault and problem of the current president and the board, and it's just not the case. The problem existed, sure, but it was because they have not been funded. So they had an audit to kind of like prove their case that it was being mismanaged. And interestingly enough, this has been going on for a while, the threat to disband the board. And they had an audit at different times during the process of discussing this. They had talked about disbanding the whole board, and then just a week ago they had some gained some traction and conversation with Democrats where they had reached some compromise, and it's like, well, we won't disband the entire board. Perhaps we'll just do half of them. And some of them were already going to be, their term was up, so they were already going to be leaving anyway. And the Democrats thought that they had reached a fair compromise, thinking that they would save some of those for no other reason, for continuity's sake, only to find out at the 11th hour in the middle of the final passage of the bill, they got backstabbed and they vacated the entire board. And on the same day that they passed that bill, the company that they were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this audit released their findings. It's pretty much like a her report. No, there. Okay? But the bill had already been passed. So there were no findings. And while TSU had no findings of mismanagement, there are two other universities in the state who they were being audited and they had findings and they were given more time to address those findings. So you see a pattern here. And this DEI is just a guise that they're using to attack marginalized communities and organizations to take us back to a time to pre-Reconstruction era, and they're using different mechanisms now to do it. And DEI is one of the things that they're doing, much like their anti-woke thing. I mean, how ridiculous is it that people don't want you to be aware, to recognize what's going on? And it is also part of the thread of the education issue that we have here, the assault on education that we're having here and in the country. So I love that while this was happening, and in addition to the TSU board being disbanded, you knew that it was planned, because as soon as it passed, the governor already had his replacements ready, all of them. So, I talked about a year ago, we have one of the largest investments in our state being that of Ford Motor Company coming here. And they have basically an entire area. They're calling it like basically a city, Blue Oval, over in the western area of Tennessee. You have people over there who are trying to do away with environmental regulations and stuff, because now that area is booming. And this is one of the areas that the Justin Pearson represents. They are trying to undo regulations that will protect the wetlands over there. They tried to take over a black charter town over there, again using the guise of it funds, mismanagement of funds. Comptroller took over, and they met all the requirements, but the comptroller doesn't want to return their power back to them. So again, it's just like fascism happening in real time. Memphis, also the city where Tyree Nichols was murdered, basically by police officers, and the group that, kind of the elite group that did this was disbanded. They passed some ordinance around traffic stops and things. And our legislative body and the governor decided to stick their nose in Memphis business and basically undo an ordinance that they had passed to prevent profiling and those types of things. At the same time, they also tried to, but just barely missed passing that. We have we have extreme abortion bans here, no exceptions. And we also have very extreme lax gun laws that just keep it's like, how much more lax do you just want everybody toting them out and open? Because they tried to pass a bill that would permit concealed carry into any business and organization, whether or not that business wanted them to have them or not. Like, it is a law in the state. They can do this. They don't have to have it's permitless carry. They don't have to have a permit. And they were trying to go even further and say, okay, you business owner, you don't want these guns in here. We're going to pass a law saying you can't stop people from bringing them in. But it did not pass. But I'm sure that they won't stop trying, because what we also have here, and this is the influence and the danger of dark money and political organizations with their own personal agendas can have, and how they can affect legislation, because we have like 20 munitions and gun manufacturers here. They are like number two in employers here in the state. In my small hometown, which is a very small hometown, they produce the largest amount of guns in the United States. Okay, Beretta. In my hometown, Smith& Wesson moved their headquarters here from Connecticut, because it was a more friendly environment. Last year, and last week, we experienced the first anniversary of the Covenant shooting. And during that week, actually on the day, they were actually considering legislation to honor the Tennessee rifle. Yes, I am not joking. So this is where we are. And like I said, it was just really an agonizing week for me here. But I don't like to say get lost or stuck in the agony and to spiral down in despair. Try to figure out how we can organize. And so to that end, like last week, we had a great candidate in here in Royce Brew. Have Blue Tennessee, which I'm working with to try to continue to get other people to run, because half of these extremists ran unopposed. And it is the only way we can change it and stop it. And I'm honored that we have one of our reps who's running for state office here in this space with us, Brian Robinson. And we're excited because he's running in my hometown district, and he's running against like the GOP majority in the House, majority leader in the House. So it's really important. Like, we may not win every race, but it's important that they see that we're not going to take it lying down and that we're going to fight back. And so, in kind of reclaiming our time and reclaiming and reframing the narrative, I decided today for Advocacy Arena, it's doing everything to inform, because I feel like awareness is the first step. And as Speaker Emeritus say, we don't agonize, we organize. So I just want to encourage you guys to not despair, to continue to organize and continue to fight. And so to that end, like I said, that was kind of what was on my mind today, but there are some other things in the news. So I do have two other speakers up that I want to get to, and then we'll just kind of highlight some of the national and international news. And a lot of that nationally has, DEI ties to it, like, the bridge that was just destroyed, and how they were attacking the mayor and other people. It's like, it was CRT, then anti woke, and now this year it's a DEI, and everything is DEI. And words like patriotism and Christianity, like they have co opted and used in just very nefarious ways. And I want us to like take it back. And I see that a lot of people on the social media apps were kind of taking it back. I heard an interview with, she's a physician, a Black physician. Dr. Uche, cannot think of her last name, but she was saying that it was diagnosing every illness. And I think the Baltimore mayor also had another way in which he reclaimed and reframed DEI. And I
I've
just feel
heard didn't earn it.
exact.
Applying it to the other the other side there,
Exactly. So
the racist.
yeah, so I love it, and I just want us to lean into that and to continue to understand where it's coming from and why, and know that we have to continue to fight against it. So with that being said, I'll get off my rant, but I'm going to give Joseph and then T-Bug an opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you, Ms. D, and hello to Soul Sister as well. I will say before I start, thank you both for coming to my space this past Friday. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening. I listened to it again and picked up on something that I missed, and I will say that my inspiration for that space came from a couple things that we talked about here in Advocacy Arena last Monday. So thank you for that. Um, I wanted to mention this last week, but Ms. D just wanted to mention a little bit of interesting Tennessee trivia that I read. A couple weeks ago, I bought a book by Tina Turner that she wrote 4 years ago about spirituality and helping to help turn your life for the better. But an interesting bit of trivia is that Haywood County, Tennessee, which I believe, which she says this is in Western Tennessee, is the oldest synagogue in Tennessee. That it was built in 1882. Because she was talking about where she's from and different aspects of spirituality. So I thought that was very very interesting. So anyway, moving on to updates here out west. I last night I booked a trip to Nevada at the end of this month. I will be up in northern Nevada Nevada in the Reno and Lake Tahoe area for 5 days. So hopefully I'll be able to get a good idea of what the political climate there is. I will say again that if you're not following Jackie Rosen already, please do. The Nevada Senate race is a must-win race for us if we want to have any hopes of keeping control of the Senate. I try to amplify her as much as I can because that is expected a very close race. The Republican primary Senate is not until June. I think there's at least three candidates, if I'm not mistaken, running. But probably front runner right now, a guy Sam Brown, who is an Afghanistan war veteran, and he is very, very hard right MAGA, dangerous in that regard. I can't imagine how his position would attract voters, particularly in Las Vegas or Reno, where the electorate is more diverse. Yeah, it might play well in Nevada's rural counties, but he is definitely a hard right MAGA. So as the time gets closer, I'll be more of an eye on that. As far as Arizona, I posted on my timeline either yesterday or Saturday, and I'll post it again. I'll put it up in the jumbotron if I can. To give a follow, Juan Hinojos Zapien is President Biden's deputy political director in Arizona, and he has been doing a lot of work recently as far as opening up campaign offices for the Biden-Harris campaign in Arizona, particularly in some of the rural counties in Arizona, which, we need every single Democratic vote we can in those rural counties. One county that stands out where they opened an office in Yavapai County, which is pretty much basically between Phoenix and Flagstaff, and it is a pretty red county, but there are Democrats there, so they're trying to mobilize as many Democrats as possible because we need to build kind of a firewall in Arizona. We have a few regularly blue counties in Arizona, but of course the big prize is Maricopa, where Phoenix is, and so but then we want to just run up the score as much as possible and get every single possible vote out of the rural county where we're not as common. So like I said, I'll try to put him up in the jumbotron, and if I can, and please give him a follow. He followed me back, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'll be back in Arizona sometime toward the end of May, a little bit before Memorial Day. Hopefully I'll be able to gauge what the temperature is on the ground. I know with the Senate race, I know Ruben Gallego has been posting a lot of different things lately. He's really trying to hammer the fact that, of course, Carrie Lake is extremist, and the fact that she is definitely anti-choice, and she's just so out of touch with the Arizona of today. Arizona is definitely a changing place, and her values, if you want to call them that, her way of thinking are just so out of touch with a lot of Arizona. So he's really, really hitting on that. I would like to see him post more about getting out and about across the state. I know he has responsibilities currently in the House, but if I see him tweeting about him getting out and about in Arizona, I will definitely be sharing that. So that's all I have to say. If something occurs to me, inspiration from the space, and I decide to host another space either this week or maybe next week, I will certainly let you know. But thank you so much, Ms. D and Soul Sister, for the time.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And it was a great space, and I am glad that you invited me, allowed me to share in it. I think it is important for us to have these kind of conversations because, as Soul Sister alluded to in her introductory to the space today, there's a lot of activity, happening in spaces, a lot of conversations being had. And while I do think it is good for people to talk, it is important, I think, for those conversations to have some level of productivity, attached to them. Like, I am just not a fan of just complaining. And that's one of the things that I see that happens in a lot of these spaces. It's okay. First of all, to know a problem, you got to talk about it. You have to make people aware. But I feel like that's where a lot of the conversation gets stuck. And I am just not a person who is encouraged by, like pity parties. Like, okay, just keep complaining and whining over and over. It's okay. Like, yes, we know what the problem is. Now, what are we going to do? So don't agonize, organize, however that looks to you. Like, it may not mean going out and canvassing or whatever, but it could mean tweeting, supporting, through amplifying the message of candidates that donating to their campaign. It can take on a lot of different, it can take on a lot of different acts. We can't all do everything, but we can all do something, because again, this is something I'm going to let T-Bug share with us, but some of the national news, and that I want to talk about, that I feel that mainstream media just kind of glosses over. And I just want to continue sounding this alarm, like fascism is here, folks. I know that many of you are aware of the horrendous video that was done by the former guy's minions with our president bound and gagged on the back of a truck. And this isn't the first instance of this kind of violent, stochastic terrorism that is being directed at him. Um, it's very much in the authoritarian playbook to desensitize us to things like this, because just a few weeks earlier, I can't remember the state right now. I have this allergy brain fog right now, but I think it's Kansas or Missouri, they had some type of party meeting, the Republicans, and they had an effigy of our president, and people were beating the effigy with a bat. Even their own party, state and national, talked about it not being a good thing or right thing to do. But nonetheless, it was already done. It's after the fact. And the fact that they could be okay with even thinking that it was a good idea is very disturbing. That this is where the levels that we have reached, and we cannot let them desensitize us to it. And Trump talks about oh, I said his name, but he speaks a lot of the language of authoritarian fascist people like Hitler, dehumanizing groups of people. And when you constantly dehumanize people, it makes it easier to do inhumane things to them. So
It was
I
Kansas. It was Kansas. I'm going to put the story up there.
Thank you, thank you. I knew it was one of them. I just couldn't remember, and I appreciate that. But it's awful, and this is where we are, and all of this is by design to just walk us into full authoritarianism. Like we are. I think somebody said sleepwalking. No, we were wide awake, walking, and they are pulling. They have the leash, and they're just pulling us, the media, and everyone along, saying, "Hey." And what is very disturbing to me is that I was listening in on a space, two different ones. So I know it disturbs me even more. I mentioned it in last week's conversation, where I heard a young woman of color talk about, because I think her heritage is from the Caribbean, talking, and from Haiti to be specific, that authoritarians can be good. Like, things were good because they kept order. I mean, like, okay, really? Really? And she just went on. And then I heard her again in another space, like, yeah, like they are priming people to be okay with dictators, and not just MAGA. Okay. Like, I mean, I feel like it's we have our black MAGA or anarchist, which are just kind of like libertarian, because they're this disenchantment with the state of things. I understand. But what I don't understand is their desire to just say, forget it. We're just not going to participate in it. We're going to protest. We're going to protest our participation. And, all you're doing is opening the door for it to come faster because there is no, so Sister spoke to this. I've spoken about it. Even Hitler realized that to change the system, you got to be part of it and that it happens incrementally. And I don't know what people think will happen if they tear it all down, so to speak. What fills that void and what it looks like. Because much like the Republicans trying to tear down the ACA and other things, they have nothing else to put in its place. Okay. And so what you do is you open the door and you leave room for the worst things to happen. And incrementalism, has lasting effects and power. And like I said, I just kind of wanted to say that because it's very disturbing for me to hear young people, especially young Black people, being seduced by the idea of dictatorships being good. I heard another woman talking about there was a space talking about capitalism, is it racism or whatever, and it's like, racism is systemic in this country. It has been since the beginning of time. And what I say is that we're not likely to undo racism by November. We can continue to work to solve it. But first of all, you can't legislate love. You can't legislate people's hearts, but you can pass legislation that protects those people that racism may be harming. And that takes us back to DEI and other things that they are trying to undo the protections of things that have existed and been built to protect us against the racism. Like it doesn't erase the races, and I don't know that we ever will. But
Yeah.
what we can do is to legislate protections for those who that racism is affecting and being pointed at. And so again, I say,
But
it's
that's
not.
only if people engage and vote for people who will enact legislation that
Exactly. And to just think you're going to fix it by protesting, withholding your vote, or just tear it all down, or think that, I don't know, maybe communism works better, maybe socialism works better. I'm here to tell you again, I'll repeat it nauseum. I visited East Berlin when it was a communist country. It ain't good. Okay, people, trust me. There is no such thing. You like your bargains, you like shopping. I went shopping. There's no such thing as sales. Okay. The government sets the price. Pretty much the government has ownership in everything. So now, as you know, our president and many other smart people, capitalism may not be perfect, but it beats all the other options. And that we have people in this country today, young people thinking that maybe we should try something else is very disturbing to me. So again, I plant my flag here in Advocacy Arena to continue to educate and inform and hopefully inspire some people to act. You cannot withdraw your participation and change anything in this country. I don't care how strong your numbers are. It's just not working. It's not going to work. So I'll land this rant there and allow T-Bug to join in the conversation. And I want to thank you all again for being here. Please share and retweet the space. Anyone else that wants to come up and, kind of talk about things related to DEI or other things that are going on, because the whole purpose of us being here every week is to continue to inform, because I don't know everything. Soul Sister doesn't know everything. And I feel like this assault on education is designed to keep us in that unknowing space, because it's very easy to manipulate and pass, propaganda. So I think that it is important that we all help to inform one another. So don't be shy, folks. Come on up and join us in the conversation. I would like to not have to talk so much today because, as I said, the allergy gremlins have me, have that sore throat and drainage. So we welcome your voice and participation in the conversation today. So T-Bug and then Joseph. We'll go back to Joseph.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon where you're at. I hope everyone stays safe from the weather issues that are to come there. And wanted to just say, Dee, watched a video with President Obama, and he mentioned that even though capitalism is flawed, there's no economic system that has lifted so many people out of poverty so quickly. So you just made me think of that. It's the best thing we got with democracy is our government. So yeah, I was going to talk about some good news, but then something came up that that is the Oregon Congressional District 5 race. It's on the DCCC red to blue list, and they endorsed a candidate, Janelle Bynum. And I was trying to stay neutral with the primary because there's a progressive, Max Skinner. But I've seen a lot of shadiness with the county parties in her district that are pro Jamie. And I mean, a lot of shady behavior. And so I'm trying to get Janelle's name out there and get name recognition. I just saw this morning that actually, somehow accidentally, one of the chairs at the Clackamas County Democrats missed several emails from Janelle's campaign asking for the Black Caucus endorsement for Clackamas County. And so I was wondering why she didn't get it and a white lady got it instead, because she has the congressional Black Caucus endorsement. But yeah, somehow they accidentally lost all those emails and didn't endorse her. So just wanted to let Janelle might need some support. I'm putting together a list this week of the red to blue candidates and anyone who's spoken in D space as well to start amplifying them as well. So maybe if we can get some name recognition out there more, it might make up for some of the other stuff that's happening. So just wanted to share that. And I put that up in the Jumbotron. And then also, I had some good news in Oregon about some funding that we received recently for the largest restorative project for Black communities in the nation. Oregon is fourth worst in the nation for Black home ownership, and I just wanted to touch briefly on why that is. Oregon was formed as a Klan state and made it illegal in the 1850s to move to the state if you were Black. Current residents at the time who were not white, they had to pay a yearly tax just for not white. And that law was never repealed until 1926. And sorry, my computer just blacked out for a minute because I had some information in front of me. So Black communities have been pushed out of North and Northeast Portland for decades due to redlining. This was made worse by construction of Interstate 5, which went right through Black community neighborhood, as well as the Memorial Coliseum and a planned expansion for Legacy Emmanuel Health Hospital. And then there was gentrification around in the 90s. A lot of white people started buying cheaper properties and taking over the neighborhood. And so there's been a lot of nonprofits working to reverse the damage done, what they can do, and bring affordable housing to that neighborhood. There have been a lot of affordable housing projects, but there's a nonprofit called Albina Vision Trust, and they helped secure a grant for $500 million in federal money for and also $22 million from the state legislature a few weeks ago, and $400 million from Nike co-founder Phil Knight in 2023. So now that they have these funds, they can start working on major projects. They're going to be able to acquire a 10.5-acre campus that is currently the Portland Public School headquarters, which they want to turn into 1,000 units of housing for working class Portlanders to move back to the neighborhoods they were pushed out of. And then they want to put cap on highways to cover that are seismically graded to support development on top of it. And that means when you're walking through the neighborhood or you're biking through the neighborhood and you're in Lower Albina, you won't realize that you're walking on top of a freeway. So this is a great thing that's happening. So just wanted to share some good news. It won't undo a lot of the damage that was done with all the families that were pushed out. But one thing that's interesting about this project is they really want to focus on Black home ownership, not just affordable housing that people are renting. So thank you for letting me speak.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. I love the good news, and when you're saying that, like one of the things that is not missed on me and many others in this area is that Tennessee State, the university that they just decided to take over, sits on some prime real estate property. Okay, and it was a community, a very rich, thriving community. You guys remember when we had Dr. Larotha Williams in here, who is a professor at TSU. That neighborhood was destroyed because they ran the interstate through there. Okay, so we have history of things being done to harm our community. So I'm always heartened to hear about things being done to repair that damage. So thank you for that
Yeah.
update, and
T Bug,
definitely.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm we're like Keystone Capers. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. But put the information about Janelle in the Jumbotron, and I do try to promote and retweet her. And that's one of, just like I said, that's one of the things that we can do is to amplify the candidates that we know that are going to be good for the communities that they're representing, and not just those communities, but for the country, because we know it's the community that, sends them there, or in their state houses to help do some of the damage that the extremists have been doing. Within certain states. So, these local legislative races are very important too. And, we have our Lauren Ashley Simmons, who's running in Texas for state house. And as I said, Brian Robinson, and we have some others here in Blue Tennessee is promoting for the state legislative bodies, because these are the areas where the most harm is being done and felt immediately across the country. So thank you for that. And go ahead, Soul Sister. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're a little
No,
out of sync today because the allergy gremlins
I
has
know.
it's captured us both.
I just want to say that I think blue Tennessee should be in every state, even if it is already blue, because it's only blue until it's red. So that's one thing. But the second, the first thing I was coming on to say is that I love when T Bug comes in here because she has this full report. And when you think of Oregon, you don't really think of a lot of diversity. And I love that you focus on that. And I love that you try to push that out and get the word out about Black candidates and other minorities who are running, and not just Black or other minorities before somebody comes at me. But it is important to see representation for underrepresented communities, especially in states like Oregon and many other states like that. So I do appreciate your hard work and all of the information you bring, especially when you're highlighting some how we can help. When you see wrong happening and you make sure that people are aware so they can jump in and support where they can. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Ditto, my friend. I absolutely second all of that. So I am so happy to have Danny up in the conversation today. I've been wanting to get her here because, there's just been so much stuff going on with our media, and your ears must have been burning last night, Danny, because Soul Sister and I were talking about you and the way that you are able to nuance the conversations around media, and we just love it. So I'm so grateful to have you in the conversation today and looking forward to it. So we're going to go to Joseph real quick and then Danny.
Thanks, Ms. D. I just kind of want to piggyback off a couple of things that you mentioned earlier that I had forgotten to mention when I was speaking earlier. Some of the things that you mentioned parallels Hitler and the former guy. Well, I put up in the Jumbotron a post from a Auschwitz-related organization that I saw earlier this morning that 90 years ago this month was when the boycotting of Jewish businesses started in Germany. And that was roughly, I think, only about a month after Hitler took power. So if we think that that can happen here, I wouldn't put it past former guy to encourage boycotting any business that is not white owned. I mean, we have, I'm sure it has happened in the past, especially in the South during the Jim Crow era, but I can see him doing this on a nationwide scale. So that I read that, it's just terrifying, and it also because in the current global climate, I have seen videos of some cities here, U.S., being attacked, Jewish businesses being attacked by some rather unsavory individuals, and I will leave it at that. But it reminds me of this, basically of what happened in Germany in the 1930s. So we definitely need to be aware of that. And then also to your point, Ms. D, about this romanticizing of communism that some people seem to have. These people wouldn't last 5 minutes in a communist authoritarian. I alluded to in my space the other night that I've met people that have immigrated from communist regimes. And I don't know where they get where they get that it's some sort of, utopia. There's plenty of historical examples show that it does work. And the matter of fact, that is parable for so many. All they got to do is Google, China under Mao, the Khmer Rouge, in Cambodia, East Germany, the Soviet
Stalin.
Union,
Okay.
Stalin. How many tens of millions of people in the Soviet Union died under Stalin? It's horrible. And then same thing in China under Mao. Tens of millions of people were killed by the government. So I don't know where, as I call them, these keyboard leftists think that communism is such a, sunshine and rainbows kind of way to live. Not. And no authoritarian system is good. So this it's something it's something that I think we're facing pressure from both sides. Got the MAGAs that want to take us into a hard right dictatorship, and then we have Twitter leftists want hard left dictatorship, and we're like, no, we're not going to do either one. This is America. It's America. We do democracy. So it kind of like what we were talking about the other night. It just shows we're seeing the results of the destruction of the education system in this country when we've got people thinking like that. So and then one last thing, I kind of wanted to comment on something that T-Bug said. One of my aunts on my mom's side lived in Oregon for many years in the 70s and the 80s. And when she first moved up there in the early 70s, she was pretty much the only Mexican person in the area where she lived. She lived kind of in a rural area near, I think, probably about a half hour or so outside of Gene. And yeah, she stuck out. Oregon was definitely not a very diverse place, especially in those days. And so that's encouraging to hear that, measures are being taken to increase home ownership among the Black community and other minorities as well. And then one last thing before I land my plane, Ms. D, you mentioned about gentrification. I'm seeing it in my just down the street from me. There's a couple of condo complexes that have come up in the few years that I've been living in this area, and a couple other parts of my city. There's been some kind of high-rise condos that have come up, and they're pricing people out who live here. My city is majority blue-collar Latino city, and what it's doing is that people are either coming from other parts of Southern California, maybe a little bit closer to LA, where things are even more expensive and they can get a little bit more bang for their buck over here, although not much. But it's driving housing costs up, and most people in this city cannot afford it. I rent and I pay a lot. There is right now, unless drastically life-changing event in my life, I don't think I will be ever able to afford to buy a house. And it makes me mad that these real estate developers get to come into our cities, build these condos, and charge exorbitant prices for them while pricing the rest of the community out. And so yeah, it's a problem. So I will land my plane on that because I know Miss Danny would like to speak, and I'm eager to hear what she has to share with. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, and I'll come back to that a little bit again because you hit on some very salient points that I want to continue to bring people's attention to the parallels because it's important that we recognize the harm that is being done with this attack on education and how it allows for these crazy narratives to take root in people who don't have a full understanding of things. So I thank you for that. And Danny, you're next. And I can't wait to hear from you today, my dear.
Oh, thank you so much. Afternoon, everyone. It's been a while.
We missed you, but we always love to have you.
Oh, but there's a reason for my absence. Danny had a really bad tooth abscess in my back molar on the left side, and it got swollen, it got infected, and like my whole left jaw was swollen, and I was throbbing in pain. I was crying for like 3 days, y'all. I'm fine now. Thank you for medication for amoxicillin. But no, it was real bad because it happened at the worst time. It happened like on a Thursday night. And then Friday, I was calling any dentist that would pick up, and not a lot of them picked up, and not a lot of them had openings. So I had to go the whole weekend. And when I tried to go to urgent care, because of a dental issue, that's not something that they look at. Same thing like emergency, they don't want to touch it. So I was just like in pain till Monday, and then finally, they was like, "Yeah, this is what you got. Yeah, we can prescribe you something, but know that that's going to have to get pulled once that infection goes away." And so I'm better now. It's still a little tender, but I'm better now. So I literally could not talk. I was talking like with the lisp like this. I couldn't eat any food. You know, if you've never had a bad toothache or abscess or infection,
Trust me, honey, I can relate to all of that. So,
Yeah, I've
yes,
had one
I
it
too.
is
feel you.
Terrible. I
it's
look
the
like a chipmunk.
yeah, and you can't even lay down. It's the one thing you want to do because why? Blood rushes to the head. So now you're just pumping the infection with more blood. And so you're
Yes, there's nothing like dental pain. Like I have been able to, and pain is not one of them. I mean, it's just like, just shoot me already. Just get it over.
listen, by the time my Monday appointment came, I was like, just rip it out. I don't care. And eventually I am going to have to get extracted. But so that's what happened to me. I'm okay. Obviously, I'm talking now. I can eat solids again. Because now you're on a diet of like mashed potatoes and soup and broth and yogurts and smoothies, and you're never really fully full. So it was a whole mess, but I'm okay. And I know it happened at the worst time because there was a lot going on in the news, right? So to pivot from that, that was my absence. And I really did want to talk about, especially with Meet the Press, Kirsten Welker, what MSNBC and NBC decided to do when it came to handling Rona McDaniel Romney. That's literally her name, but she dropped the Romney for Trump and some other things. And so I won't stay long, I promise. But just to kind of backtrack on a little bit of that.
Take your
That
time, preacher.
that whole conversation that you all just had about education, really, when we have an informed public, an informed electorate, that is the key to a thriving democracy. People need to be educated about history. This is why history is so important. And it needs to be properly reported so that it can be preserved, so that we can look back at it and we can see what went wrong, what went right, who fought for the rights of others, who sat back and watched, and who was responsible for harming others. I think that's the whole point of history, is that you kind of get a little bit of a blueprint of what to do and what not to do going forward. With Donald Trump, I have never known anybody. I don't even know if was it Andrew Jackson would have been able to get away with this at his time. I know that Ronald Reagan wasn't able to get away with a lot of what he does, or even Nixon. I think even with those men, they were monsters. I would even add Woodrow Wilson to that as well. They had still a level of dignity to them. They just wanted to fight for their side. And as wrong as it is, they still had a line they would not cross. Somebody said something in a comment section like months ago, and I retweeted it. I don't think I think I liked it, and I should have retweeted it. But they said, you know, Donald Trump is like every thief. The only thing he won't steal is shame. And I think that is our problem with having to deal with someone like a Donald Trump. He is shameless. There's no bottom for him. If he
His own son-in-law said that there was no low too low for him to go. Like you can't,
right.
you can't outdo him in that area.
Yeah, he's just going to keep going and going and going. And I don't know why or how you're supposed to report on him, how you're supposed to try to hold someone who refuses to be held accountable. But a lot of this is not on him because a lot of the what we see from Donald Trump is enabling, and it's enabling from the Republican Party. Yes, I don't care how many times they are off the record saying they don't want him. You need to be brave enough to say it on the record, and you need to stand and stick by that. Anything less than that is a waste of everybody's time. It's enabling behavior by his voters, by his supporters, but also his donors. Look at how much money he was able to get for Truth Social. Look how many billionaires are starting to change change their minds about him.
I'm so glad. Yes, I'm going to add to that when you finish, Danny. Yes, keep going. But
And
yes,
to have them kind of go back on their word. Well, why would the money is still flowing in? Not as much as Biden, but the money is still coming in. People are still allowing him to be the monster that he is. The fact that he's been able to slow walk a lot of these charges against him, the fact that he's been able to use the Justice Department again or to have it work in his favor so far, it just does not seem fair. We're talking about a level of privilege I don't think anyone has ever exploited the way that he has. And you put that up against anybody else, you know what the consequences would be like. You know what the reporting would be like. You know what the accountability would be like. And the fact that he still gets to walk free and make threats and post pictures of Biden. How are people still not understanding that he is a threat, not to our democracy, but just as he is a literally walking talk threat. Nobody is safe with him. Nobody. His family is not safe with him. This country is not safe with him. Our allies are not safe with him. And to those that like to think, well, we'll just be a communist country. Okay, and what does that do with our allies? Are they even going to be our allies? Or are they just going to come in and take what they can take and then go back? And looking at Russia, looking at Saudi Arabia, why do you want to play with that? Did not we already do the work? And I said we, but I mean, didn't our forefathers already do the work of laying the groundwork of what we want this country to be? And over the centuries, there have been different groups of people that said, you know what, this is a good baseline, but it needs to go further. It needs to protect more people. It needs to grant more rights. It needs to be better. And we are just supposed to what? Let that all fall by the wayside because you didn't get free healthcare. Somebody didn't pay your debt that you signed up for. Yes, he's dead. He's done a lot, but he didn't do that one thing that you wanted him to do. Or it's because he's not Bernie Sanders. And that's who you want to take credit for this economy, for these bills being passed, for the infrastructure bill. Or is it Elizabeth Warren? Or was it Donald Trump? I'm pretty sure there have been plenty of people in the past that have looked at certain presidents and like, you know what? I don't like that this person was able to pass this bill, but you know what? It got done. So let's appreciate it. And let's
exactly.
do it.
Like, who cares who gets the credit? As long as it gets done and people are helped. But yeah, I hear you.
And to watch the media once again do exactly what they did 8 years ago now, because now we're in 2024. How have you have not figured out how to report on? And I kind of go back. How did the reporters report on Bull Connor? This version of Trump is not the first that this country has seen. And I feel like he is Bull Connor. He is George Wallace. He is Nixon. He is Reagan. He is Andrew Jackson. He's all of them into one. And I get that could be a lot, but it makes me wonder, journalism just didn't start. How are they reporting on these men before? How are you holding them accountable? And if they're going to be people that's going to enable him, why not also hold them accountable? And that's also where the dark money comes, because we only know of some of the money that comes his way, not all of it. And it includes the judges as well. The fact that Cannon down here in Florida is able to do what she's been able to, slow walk this trial for as long as she's been able to, she doesn't have the privilege like the Supreme Court does. Eventually she's going to come up for re-election, and I'm hoping if Florida gets this act together that she will be held accountable for this. You shouldn't be able to get away with it. You are literally helping the defense, and we see you doing it in broad daylight. You're not even trying to hide it. And this is where good journalism comes in, because this is where good journalism reports on. It does not need to be anything that has to do with Joe Biden and what the Democrats are doing. And I'm not asking for a fluff piece. I'm not asking for fair or favorable coverage of Biden, but I'm asking for fair and balance. Journalism at its heart is supposed to inform the people. And right now, the people for a really long time have been able to choose the facts that they want, choose the journalists that they want, choose the misinformation and disinformation that is going to feed into their biases. And the fact that there's a market for, they're not even on the fringe, they're literally on our cable news channel. And they're buying up all these other small flailing newspapers that have been around, like the Baltimore Sun that we talked about a couple of months ago. And now you're creating a news desert. How are you able to do that? And then you wonder why people turn you off, because people don't want the news to be presented the way you're presenting it. It's not even fact based, it's opinion based. You could throw all the shade that you want. What am I supposed to do with all that shade? Laugh at it? Okay, now what? Where's the fact? Where's the research? Where's the investigation? Good journalism requires integrity. It also requires discipline. And whether it's a fluff piece, whether it's a hard hitting piece, whether it's an uncomfortable piece, whether it's a heavy piece, it should always be it should always be fair and balanced. Everyone should be able to read an article. I get the who, what, when, and where, why it happened, who's responsible, who's not responsible. And we do not get that. And I can't remember the last time we did have that. It's been a long time. And shame, because when we do get it, we try to highlight it because we're not used to it. And even when we highlight the good journalists, then it's never enough of that kind of journalism. Or you're behind a paywall and you have to pay for the truth, but the lie is inaccessible to everyone. Eventually, we're going to have to figure this out. It's not just, the Republican Party that needs to take a look at itself. It's not Donald Trump. It's not the Supreme Court. It's also journalists. It also is legacy media. You're the fourth estate. What you do is essential to our democracy. Consider all the jobs that our founders had. They were sculptors, they were inventors, they were philosophers, lawyers, doctors, yada, yada, yada. And the one profession that they decided they were going to protect in the Constitution was freedom of the press. The people needed to have correct and fair, balanced information accessible to them. You could even say that we even pay for cable news, right? MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. And if you want to stay local, sometimes you don't always get the full extent of what's going on in Washington or internationally when you just watch local, because they are local. They don't have the funds to do what MSNBC could do or CNN can do. And so you leave a void. And that is currently being filled up, as we see, with misinformation and disinformation. And it is harmful. You got children who think the world is flat. You have people who think, okay, communism may not be so bad after all. On what planet? Go look at the people who are not in power and how they live in a communist country. See what they would change. You really think you're going to be able to get away with what you get away with here in a democracy? Go look if you try to go and pull a strike in a communist country, or if you are black, or if you are gay, or if you are sick, if you're part of the disabled, or if you have a mental health issue, and you need your medication. You really think they care about fair wages in a communist country? You really think they care about your $17 latte that you get from Starbucks? You probably won't have, not trying to make light, but there's a reason why those people tend to flee a communist country. You can ask Cuba, you can ask China, you can ask Russia. And what do they go for in place of a communist country? A democracy. And our democracy is not perfect. It is a work in progress. We are always trying to strive to make it better so that everyone that is in this country feels loved, protected, under the law. No one is outcast. No one is othered. No one is made to believe that they are being disrespected or judged without merit. And what's the one thing that goes with a communist country? Journalism, the fourth estate. No. We'll control what the people gets to know. What does that look? Imagine people not knowing what happened at the Baltimore Bridge if it's not for journalism. Then what? What if you don't know that a storm is coming? Then what? What if you don't know about your favorite rapper, the charges coming out on him, or your politician that you donated money to and that they could be corrupt, or they're hiding gold bars in their closet? Then what if you don't know that there's lead in your water and your children are drinking it? They're bathing in that water. There's a responsibility that all journalists have. This is a profession that you chose to get into. That's fine. But there is something that requires more. It requires transparency. It requires discipline. And that's how you build integrity. And that's how a lot of the reporting that is put out can stand up against scrutiny, can hold up against history. My favorite example to always use is the book and the movie, All the President's Men. What, 40, 50 years old now? That story still holds up. That research, that investigation still holds up. A lot of what was revealed, a lot of what Donald did, he already had the blueprint of what Nixon did. They all follow the same script. When are we going to recognize that? When are we going to realize that? And I know that's kind of an essential question, but there needs to be an outcry of when journalism get it wrong. And as everybody else, y'all know I don't like Chuck Todd. I was surprised as hell that he was one of the first ones to come out about Rona. And he came out on his old show, Meet the Press. Still don't like him because I'll never forgive him about Hillary Clinton was overprepared, but he raised legitimate questions. And so now, can we even trust NBC executives and the decisions that they're making? They've been fumbling the bag a lot. So again, it makes you want to turn it off. She is named in a lawsuit that's currently going on about election interference. Why do you think, out of all people, she would be qualified to speak at all on this presidential election? What are we going to gain by listening to her? He asked really good questions. Kristen Welker, I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying. If I gave Katie Tur, and the other ones a chance, I'm going to continue to try to give her a chance. But part of me just want to know, like, y'all can't call Ann Curry. Like, is Soledad O'Brien busy right now? Like, there has to be somebody else better. But he had every right to question Kristen Welker to her face. And NBC executives they deserve to get called out for that, because who is she going to bring over? She don't even work for the Trumps anymore. She was willing to change her name for Donald Trump. What influence does she have? So you just want people to watch and hate watch? They're still going to turn it off and say, I don't believe it, she's lying. So you created this storm, then you had to go back on. Now your integrity is in question. Who is making the decision? And you don't even provide a reason of why you even tried to hire her. And then to the tune of 300,000, where's her accountability in the role that she played and why we're in this mess? It is all connected. And to those who are not educated, it's unfortunate, because they are going to listen to the misinformation and disinformation. That's who she was going to pull in. It wasn't going to be an equal side of reporting that's both fact-based. No, she'd be lying her ass off. And then either a Democrat or someone who actually knows what they're talking about has to go back and clean up what she said. That's not journalism. You want to do everything else but report the news. And this is why you have a Bill Maher, you have a Joe Rogan, you have the Charlemagne the God, you have a Jon Stewart, comedian, TV personality, who think they can do your job too. Oh, it's not that bad. And then they can fall under the umbrella of being protected by free speech, but none of the accountability of when it comes to making sure that you lead with the truth. It's hard. I don't think that journalism is easy by any stretch of the imagination. It requires not being first to report, but being right. And I think that is what's in. We're on a 24-hour news cycle, and you got to fill those hours with something. But I feel that there's enough worthy news going on in the world, that it should not be left to the Charlemagne the God or the Bill Maher who play at being a journalist. To the greats that have come before, that we love, that we mention all the time, to the Tim Rustards, even his son Luke, he's still available, y'all. David Gregory is still available. Brian Williams, wherever he's at, he's still available, I'm sure. Soledad O'Brien is still around. Someone who I don't mention enough. NBC also dropped it with her too. Tamron Hall, great journalist. And I know she has her talk show, and I know she's doing well, but she started off with NBC, and then she had her show on MSNBC, and they let her go for one reason or another. We still don't know. And there's the end of that. And she took her viewers with her because she was the real deal. She cared about the truth. You cannot tell me that Rona cares about the truth. She does. She will do what Nikki Haley, she will fly in the wind. She will do what needs to be done at the moment when it's necessary. People like that cannot be trusted. Not something that is important, as fragile as news, as report. And I honestly don't know what the answer is. I am tempted to just shut everything off, but I'm nosy and I like to be informed. Being informed gives me a level of comfort because I know kind of what to expect. I know what's going on. To not have that, have no pushback on that, that's where you get into really dangerous territory, because then nobody trusts any. And then what kind of democracy will we be? And my last point, I have not mentioned this on the timeline, and part of the why journalism is so essential is Haiti. My family's from Haiti, and there's a lot of news coming out about it. And we still don't know who to trust when it comes to the reporting on Haiti. My dad is someone who likes to listen to Haitian radio, but down here in South Florida, a lot like Spanish radio, it has more of a conservative leaning reporting. So he doesn't always trust. And the journalists on the ground, you just don't know what they can freely say. So we don't really know what's going on. There's still family that we have there. We're lucky if we can get in contact with them and they tell us, but that's it. And talk about their government. Their president assassinated July of 2021. We're now in April of 2024. and they just had their prime minister resign. There is no leader, and they don't know when the next election will be. I do not want to be like Haiti. If my mom wanted to go back, she couldn't even go back. To think that that could never happen in here, I don't know what kind of fantasy y'all living in. It can
And,
most definitely happen.
and Danny, this was the topic that was being discussed when I heard this young Black woman of
Mm,
Haitian descent actually say that things weren't so bad under Papa Doc. I was like, oh
yep.
my God, where is Danny? Where is Danny? She was like, sure, people couldn't say anything bad about him, but at least we ate. I'm like, are you kidding me? My
Yeah.
head was about to explode.
Yeah. No, Papa Doc and his son, no, we don't want that either. He had his own secret police called the Tonton Macoute, and it's spelled TontonMachoute. And when he didn't want to get his hands dirty, he sent his secret police to do his dirty work. And when he died, a lot of them stayed and they worked for his son. And it was just the same stuff going. And it's a lot.
Yeah, and
And
I mean, like you said, as a person of Haitian descent, I mean, can you imagine someone here who now she granted she said that now she is American born. She has only grown up here, and she said she was listening to her parents. I'm like, Danny's parents need to go have a conversation with this woman's, people or whatever, because I don't know. I just I don't get it. I don't get how you can romanticize a dictator, unless you part of the regime. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Because that's the only people it's working for.
Exactly. And it goes into misinformation on a smaller scale. It happened in 2016 because on Haitian radio, which is why my dad don't like to listen to it as much, they villainize Hillary. Oh, well, if you are upset about what's going on in Haiti, you need to look at the Clinton. That money that was raised and Clinton's had a hand in it, and they go into the conspiracy theories. That money was spent on Chelsea's wedding, or, and they have all the beef for Hillary, not Bill, but Hillary. And they have all the beef for her, but not for the Red Cross, not for the missionaries that came in and were raping boys and girls. It was just so selective of who they wanted to make as the boogeyman. And unfortunately, in 2016, here in South Florida, many Haitian people did not vote for Trump. They just were not going to vote for Hillary. So they left that part blank. And that, of course, helped Donald Trump and hurt Hillary Clinton.
And they're talking about basically doing the same thing again, like
Again,
those of them that get the fact that voting is important, but they
yeah.
still, it's like, I'm just going to leave the top of the ticket blank. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how's that going to work out for you?
Yeah, well, I don't want to call them pro Hamas, but I'll call them pro Palestinian. With some of them during their town hall, they were saying, we'll do with a little bit of pain for Donald Trump. What do you think Donald Trump is going to do? You really think he's going to care about the same man? The minute he got in office, put up a Muslim ban. You really think he cares about Hamas? You really think he
and
cares?
and has said openly that he plans to do it again, and that was literally his first act of business as
Yeah.
president. I mean, he wasn't even in office a month when
Mm.
he established that.
And pay attention of the immigration lawyers that raced to the airport to try to help them, making sure that information was filed correctly, making sure that they at least get a court date and they get a stay. And this is how you reward the same people that were willing to help. Okay, yeah, we'll do it again all over. You have got to be kidding me. I don't understand that law. And I'm sorry, I cannot trust anybody who's willing to play with our democracy like that, because you might, not you personally, but others might have the option to leave and go someplace else. This is it for me and my family. We literally cannot go back. There is a tribal advice. Do not travel. Can't go. And there are parts of Haiti that has no violence at all. But the airport is in the cap Port-au-Prince. That is the major city. That is where the violence is happening. That is where the airport is. So if you're going to get there, you're going to have to go through them. And if you're like my mom and my dad, who both live in the country, you got to go through the city to get to the country. And you got to travel up the mountain. And according to my parents, part of the mountains are so steep and so narrow, only one person or, one car can travel at a time. You kind of got to go off to the side a little bit. It can't be two cars going in opposite direction. And that's usually where people get robbed. And that's where young girls get raped and people get killed and you get kidnapped. It is not a safe environment. Full transparency, my mother was crying a couple of weeks ago because of it. A childhood friend, just out at night, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and they came, and she had to call her family, and they were requesting a ransom, and her friend said, don't pay it because they're going to kill me anyway. And they did. That is the reality of what's going on in Haiti. My mom can't even go for the funeral. So she had to kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to call it a mule because a mule has a different connotation, but, send money through other means, through a person to make sure that it gets to the person that it needs to get to. Because you can't send it through the immigration. And that's another thing. The gangs are at the immigration. So if you're going to send money, guess where you got to go to the money? To the immigration. They're holding up the passport. It is not a pretty sight in Haiti right now. And I've never stepped foot. So I'm just hearing this, through my mom and some family that we still have. It's just not a good thing right now, and not a good situation. So we have nowhere else to go if this United States don't work out for us. Like we might have to go to Canada, maybe Mexico if they're feeling friendly to us. But that's it. The other islands also, Bahamas also has an advisory. Jamaica also has an advisory. It's not the safest at the moment. And the one thing I don't want to just focus on Haiti, but this is what happens when you start playing with your democracy. This is what happens when you feel like, oh, okay, this election is not going to be that. Okay, it's not a big deal. Okay, whatever. It's been almost 3 years, 3 months shy of 3 years, and they still have not had an election yet. And they can't trust to have an election because nobody trusts the government. Why? Because more than 75% of the government are the gang. What would United States look like if that should happen? Where are our safety nets to prevent that from happening? And we better all hope that it holds up, because what are you going to do? Pay attention to your station in this country. Who's likely to be harmed first? Who is the government going to go in and try to help? What are our allies? It's a question that needs to be asked by journalists, because now is not the time to play around. Donald Trump doesn't care, and he has no filter on him. He's telling you exactly what he is. You need to take him at his word. That's a man with a vengeance, and he's old, and he has no care. He will have executive power, meaning that he's our commander in chief. They have to follow his order. Do you see how many of them folded 4 years ago under him? And if he decides to fire them, he's going to get yes men around him. He wants to be a Vladimir Putin, and it's not going to work, hopefully, if everybody gets out and vote. But you at least need to know, I think we all need to understand that there's a very real possibility that he could win. And what does that mean for this country? What does that mean for you personally in your life? But what does that mean for the country? And I keep talking about our allies. Hell, what are our enemies?
Exactly. I mean, and this is one of the things that I continue to go back to in our conversation is, like placing emphasis on what's at stake. Because right now, in the moment where you still have your freedoms and you can express these crazy ideas or whatever, that ability will no longer exist. Like, will you be able to even have these kind of conversations in spaces? Will there be a
Right?
spaces? You know what I'm saying? Will there be, the
Yeah.
ability to communicate with one another? Forget about the media, but just, like with one another. They're just not thinking things through, and it's so infuriating. But Danny, I am so glad, so thankful for all that you have shared here. I hope you can stay with us a while. I do have a couple of other hands up. So
Absolutely.
I want to give them a chance to add to the conversation, but you always get us thinking and talking and anxious to share. And I have so many things to kind of add to some of the points, the great points that you brought up. So can you stay with us a while today?
Yeah, I'll definitely try. I'll let you know ahead of time, but I'll definitely try. Absolutely.
Good, good. I'm
But
looking
thank you for
forward to.
letting me speak.
Oh, well, thank you. Always such a wonderful addition to the conversation, and so many thought provoking things that you just shared with us. So, with that being said, we're going to go next to Bella and then to Kay, and then I want to just kind of drill down into some of the things that Danny and Joseph and, I had said earlier. So thank you all for being here, joining with us today in another great Advocacy Arena conversation. So Bella, you're up next.
Good afternoon, Dee. Boy, this has been some really good conversation today. I've really enjoyed it. Kind of a little bit going back to elections. Elections were boring for people. People didn't pay attention to who they voted for. They were voting straight ticket, just get it over with. It wasn't as important to people who the Secretary of the county was, Secretary of State, their local government, and also most of the little towns aren't run by the mayor that are elected. They're run by city planners. People missed out because they did not go to the meeting. They didn't pay attention. And it's real easy for people to get their agenda and their laws passed, such as zoning and planning. It's a boring meeting, but you've got to go if you care about your neighborhood. So you can speak up at all those meetings. It's really easy, and there's usually just a handful of people there. We have to start paying attention and encourage other people, because people are still lazy. They still don't want to have to do that part of it. They want somebody else to take care of it, and then they don't have to worry about it. But we really have to encourage people to go to these small meetings for the town if you care about your zoning. And zoning is extremely important. And once things are in a law, it's really difficult to undo it in zoning, especially. So I just want to encourage everybody, stay active even after this election. Stay active. Your involvement can be to run for office, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Your involvement should be that you showed up at the meeting and you paid attention to what was happening around you in your area. And you can change things, because I'm not kidding. I've been to lots of meetings, and there's usually just a handful of people there to be able to make the decisions, until something big comes up, and then everybody is upset, and then they're going to go storm the city council and make all kinds of threats against them. But all those people, if they really cared, they should have been there from the beginning. And so it takes some time, and they're usually in the evenings, so you can do it after work. And take notes. What do you want your community to look like? What do you want your schools to look like? These are things that you have a voice for, and not enough people have been speaking up, and that's why we have lost a lot of our control and power over things. If you don't know the judge that are on the ballot, then you need to be Googling them and see how they ruled, what they did. Information is out there. It doesn't have to be printed in the newspaper. You can get it yourself, and you can find out if this is a judge that you would like to have judging your peers around you whenever they appear in front of them. What was their record? If you go to the doctor and he tells you that you need a surgery on your knee, you should absolutely say, how many of these surgeries have you done? And what is your success rate? Start questioning people. Don't just blindly trust whoever is in charge. You start questioning, and it's okay. You don't have to rant and rave. You can do it kindly. You can do your own research, and your voice matters at every level. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing that in this conversation, because it is absolutely true and so very important. And many of those local meetings, like the county commission and city council, many of them are recorded. So if you're not able to make it, you can listen to them, because I listen to the ones from my home county, even though I don't live there anymore, but to keep up with kind of what's going on. And that's what they're counting on. And that's, again, why another major part of my mission and purpose for our weekly conversations is to not only inform and inspire civic engagement, but to motivate people and create that understanding that it is 365 days a year. It is not always sexy and exciting, but they're counting on you not caring and not being aware. And it is often just a few people that are actually making the policy and having their voices heard because they're in the room, which is another reason why it gets me so upset with these people who absolutely have legitimate gripes and concerns, but their solution is to disengage, to just unplug from the system. And I'm like, no, that's not going to be very effective in changing the system at all. It sounds real exciting and real revolutionary, but it just doesn't work. And so we have to be informed and engaged at every level, locally and federally. And it does take a little work, and it is not always sexy and exciting and sensational like a lot of the news. And I think that that's also another problem is that, we have people who want these charismatic leaders and things. And, this is also how you get a strong man in place because, they are doing sensational things and being reported on in that way, but often very lacking in actual leadership skills, i.e., the former guy. So thank you so much for just including that in the conversation because it is very, very important for people to be engaged at those very local levels because this is the level where they can go in and decide where a pipeline goes and or where it doesn't and all sorts of things. So it is crucial, again, like I said, that we have this engagement at every level, 365 days a year, like not just every 4 years, and not just presidential elections or the Senate and the federal legislatures that we vote on. But it's starting even at the school board. I mean, look at Moms for Liberty. Like they put school board elections kind of back in the news and on the radar for people because of their sensationalism and behavior and their very aggressive behavior and stuff. But school board elections and things have been around forever. And this is also the areas that they're targeting because people don't pay attention to them because they are not sexy and exciting. They're not being reported on at national level until something crazy happens there. But it is so important to have these people in place who actually are affecting your immediate life and quality of life in your community because really at the heart of it, that is where democracy really churns. That's where the wheels of democracy really churn and matter. So, again, I want to thank you all for coming and joining in the conversation. It's been wonderful. And we're going to go next to Kay, then Ngazi. And I see we have Mark here with us today. So, again, glad that he's able to come in and join us and looking forward to hearing him share some of the aspects of the things that are going on here in the country. So, 2K, you're up next, my dear.
Hello. Hi. Wonderful host, both Dee and Soul Sister and everyone in the room. I'd like to align with some things that Danny said and then move on from that. First, I'm going to say, as a Black woman, I pull for my fellow Black women. So it went, and I think, full disclosure, when I'm disappointed, then I think maybe my reaction and disappointment is even stronger. So when it came to, I wasn't really too hopeful about Kristen Welker when she got the appointment to meet the press. But you know what? Tried to keep an open mind. My open mind has snapped shut. You might have heard it. That loud bang you heard, that was my snapping shut on Welker. And I did, so I checked, and it seems like, at least the last thing I saw, it seems like she wins. Meet the Press wins its time slot, so maybe I guess that's good enough for NBC. I wanted to add to what Danny said about people. This is a business, so journalism is skewed in a way that why do they have to pay attention to truth and accurate when they have leaned into the area of infotainment because we have 24/7 news cycles that need to be filled. And I know I've been guilty myself. I used to have MSNBC on all the time. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore, so I have eliminated. I'm down shows, but one thing that I have noticed is it cracks me up how they run with a theme. So they have breaking news, and they have the music that comes on and the graphics, and that same breaking news is breaking every hour with every single person. It is no longer, you know what? Breaking news can only break one. Maybe it's me, but it is not breaking news. And stories are the same. The level of questioning is the same. There's very little imagination. There's certainly no pushback. So moving on just from Kristen, throughout the presentations and representation. So, and I do get information from other sources. I'm turning to PBS NewsHour, and there's some stuff that I have found podcasts very helpful. But to continue my ramble and rant, one thing that I want to point out too is with our success, I'm claiming it, in getting Senate, House, and White House, another thing that we can, in addition to, I think, reclaiming or making some inroads with our education system, because see, it isn't just what's being taught. People are also they're not getting experiential learning, and they're also not getting being told how to think. Your opinion it's like you can't fight gravity is right. So your opinion is not going to affect it. So there are some certain things that they're just fact. There are things in the world, and you might have you also, I think it is incumbent upon us to have the discussion about teaching people how to think critically, and that will line up with historicity and learning basic information and how to question, and to also maybe find some excitement in learning how to think critically, not just accepting things on face value. So and so said this, I believe it, and then everything just goes to hell as things have been. The other thing that we will get back, or get, I'm hoping, is some real serious scrutiny of social media purveyors, because what's going on under the hood with all of that, not just on this forum, Facebook, etc., it's heinous. And there's been some discussion about how they need to be, but they are not regulated. And I think that is a thought that comes as for some reason, people have resisted that idea. Even people who might be have the same kinds of opinions that we have, but it is not a free speech issue. There needs to be regulation in a way, regulate them like a utility, make them feel the pain and financially, et cetera, in terms of fines. I'm not talking about, I'm not just being negative about, I don't want anyone to feel pain, but I think you know what I mean. I mean, there are different schemes in Europe that are affected so that you can't just say any blank thing, right? The other thing that I want to add to is I'm circling back to the Meet the Press, etc. So where we might not be able to affect change with eyeballs. There was someone in this room who said once something about financial, so not just boycotting particular advertisers. I don't know how to set this up, but what I would like to see, if we could get in alignment where we would have something like have a day where millions of people just don't spend a dime on anything across these United States, to show powers that be, these people who think they want tax cuts. It's not going to get you so much good to have tax cuts when no one's buying anything from you. To show them our power, because street protests, etc., that sort of apart from what's going on in the world now, that I think is really heinous and ugly. It's really having there's just too much anger and drama. I say, just like Bobby Fleckman, money talk, bull crap walk. So if we could gather so that, again, and not to inconvenience, we can plan ahead, we can do X, Y, and Z, we can help people who might need to have help, so that there just a day where we do not spend a cent at all, show the power of our power, and maybe get, whether it's journalists, whoever thinks they're invested in grinding us down for a dollar, to wake up. And I will land my plane there. Thank you.
I love that idea because you're right. Like you said, what good do the tax cuts do you if no one is buying your stuff? And a couple of other things that I think Danny pointed out, that many of these news corporations, we know that they have been bought out by corporate entities. And I was struck by the fact that many of the people who were like not in love with Trump, but they're okay with attaching their money to him if he is the only choice. I mean, it happened in 2016. The Coke machine and the Federal Society people, the CMP people, all of the big donor money, they had their money behind Ted Cruz. He didn't make it, through the electoral process. So they were like, okay, well, our guy didn't make it, and we're going to put our money on this guy because we know that our money can affect what he does, will guide him, and they don't care. And this again goes back to a historical aspect. This is what happened in fascist Italy and in Germany. Like corporations were willing to support and go in with these guys because it was beneficial to them, to their bottom line. And the same thing is being repeated here. And we have to be aware of that. And then we also have to, I love your idea, and we have to continue to push these creative ideas and ways of fighting back. Like marching may not work for everything, but there are other ways to get people's attention and to affect change. And certainly, as you said, money gets people's attention. So thank you so much for saying that, and also for joining in the conversation, because at the end of the day, it is going to take all of us being involved every day in some way and having these conversations and spreading these ideas, because we have to continue to be informed. And whether or not the mainstream media is doing it, doing their job, which we know they are not, we have to be wise enough to know that the information currently is still out there, and do everything we can to bring it to the forefront, and spread it in our circles of influence, because it is very much the part of the authoritarian playbook to shut those information streams down. And like you said, this assault on education, it's not just misinforming people or changing the narratives on things, but it's also, as you said, education. A key part of it is not so much like filling people's heads with facts and figures and historical information, but teaching people how to think critically. That's how you have effective adults, citizens, learning to, exercising critical thinking. And I have always said, because it's a class I didn't take until college, and I feel like this is something that should be taught like in school, very early stages, because it is so important. And I just
Ninth
feel,
grade. Ninth grade would be a good, yeah, and
yeah.
keep re-emphasizing it
Yeah,
every grade.
because right, because these people unfortunately are getting their news from basically social media influencers like
Yeah,
the
TikTok.
Charlemagne's and places like that. And unfortunately they're able to pass as news sources, which they are not. They are
And
infotainment.
not everyone's going into college.
Exactly. And it's just infotainment. And we have got to get past this desire to be entertained, and desire to be informed. And while it may not be sexy and exciting, it could save our lives. And it definitely is what's going to be required to save our democracy. And the mainstream media is not about that, because they think that they will be okay even if we're not. Sad to say, they will not, but some of them would like to try to find out. And unfortunately, I would like for them to, but unfortunately, they can't find out. They can't reach the FO stage without all of us suffering. So I'm not willing to let them experience that. So we're just going to have to keep calling them out and doing what we can so that we don't have to find out. So thanks so much again. So up next, we've got Ngazi and then Mark. And we'll come back to you, 2K. 2K, did you have a real quick comment? Because I know your hand went back up. So, wow.
Oh, yes. Okay. What I forgot to say too is let's all do ourselves a favor. I know people here read a book because doom scrolling releases a particular type of dopamine, and critical thinking is assisted by you read and process things differently when you engage with print. So not just a book, a newspaper, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to uplift that as part of the process of critical thinking. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is becoming a lost art, unfortunately. And, even in the reading of the book, people are going to have to be able to be critically informed about, who wrote the book and why and what the purpose is, So, absolutely. So, Ngazi, you're next, and then Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, we can. And again,
Perfect.
so fortunate and blessed to have you in the conversation today. Glad you're joining us.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come. My kids are on spring break, so open afternoon. Well, at least for a little while. So, I wanted to speak to what Danny said. I came into the space just at the right time. I'm glad to hear Danny's voice again as well. So, she was talking about both the media and just kind of the challenges of finding a secondary place to live. Should America's democracy fall, we're as a Nigerian as well, similar thing. Like I think people don't really understand how bad it is out here in other places where democracy has either already fallen or never been fully completed. And I think it's very mindful to kind of look to those countries as an example. I think what happens is a lot of times people assume that because these countries are less developed than the West, then that means that the West is immune, and we are not. We could easily find ourselves in a similar situation to these other countries very quickly. But also, what I was thinking, interesting enough, like literally last night, was how do we rebuild democracy when it's already started to backslide? Because for America specifically, the conditions that have led to the backsliding of our country aren't really going to change. I mean, ultimately, we're stuck between people who want a pluralistic, multicultural democracy and people who don't want that. And we can't make the country less black and brown. It's just going to continue to get more and more diverse. And so when there's an entire segment of the population who feel like entitled to the country in a way that they want to push everybody who doesn't fit their definition of what an American is out, and they have given up on believing in democratic processes, and now they believe that the only way to take it back is by force. That doesn't go away overnight. Kind of to Kay's point, even if we were able to like increase education and literacy and critical thinking, that's still going to take to begin to work back to being able to take back our democracy in a certain way. So quick plug for the podcast and book I was listening to last night as I was thinking about this is I don't know, you guys probably heard about the Bulwark a couple of times when I've been in the space. Tim Miller has taken over from Charlie Sight. And so he was talking to Tom Schaller and Paul Waldman, who wrote a book about this called White Rural Rage. And so they highlight how, the racist elements of the backsliding of our democracy, that it's not about economic anxieties. It's really simply that white people feel entitled to the country, and the more and more non-white people who are taking places in society, it just upsets them, and they want to give up all democracy because they don't believe that anybody else who's non-white deserves to be here. But they also, in their book, as white, lay out kind of what they think be a roadmap. So I just wanted to add that maybe further place to go for is those of us who are interested in looking to see how do we take this back. There are those in this conversation too. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And yes, I've heard many people speak about the Bulwark. I do read some of their stuff and information, but you mentioning them brings up something that I wanted to mention, which I had spoken to Soul Sister about in the cable news cycle. What I'm hearing a lot from like never Trumper Republicans and things like the Lincoln Project guys and stuff is that, like we need to get the Biden administration needs to, of course, get tougher and stronger speaking to things. And they need some of these never Trumpers and Republicans to speak to some of these people. So they should ask. And, while Maybe they are, maybe they should. Like, I'm still stuck at the angry part of, like, you see what's happening, you know the danger. Why do you need to be asked to do the right thing for your country, to speak out about this? So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. Like, and the only thing, because I heard several of them say that, and so I was like, why do they need to be asked? And then I think I got a partial answer in that they wanted cover, basically, by saying that the administration had asked them so that they wouldn't receive the ire and the torment and the targeted harassment and physical danger that may come their way for speaking out against the former guy. And again, like I said, I mean, if you know that this is what's going to happen, then why don't you speak out more? Like, you need cover to speak the truth. I'm sorry. I just, like, you're not down with democracy enough for me yet. Like, even though you know the truth and you know your party, why aren't you speaking about the dangers? And why do you need to be asked to do this by the president? So um, that's just my 2 cents worth. And up next, we've got Mark. So glad to have you here today, man. Tell us what's going on in the legal arena.
Well, happy Easter Monday and day after Transgender Day of Visibility, which I got in so many arguments about yesterday. And I'll speak more about it in a minute. And hello, Dee, and hello, Soul Sister, and hello, Advocacy Arena. This is my favorite space because we've been going for a long time. Number one, number two, it just revives me. It's just actually it being Easter Monday and being able to come off Easter, which I had a great time with my family, and then go into my ex Twitter space family and talk to Advocacy Arena. I think we're going on 2.5 years now, and everything's everything's culminating. I feel like we're in a symphony and we're in the second stanza. And the second stanza might be boring, but it's important. It's important because it's a part of the entire composition. And so where we are right now in April, even though it's probably going to be a boring month up until April 15th, it's still a part of the entire composition. Not just the composition of this election cycle, but the song of America. Right? We are in a we are our notes in the song of America, and we're a group of people that believe in democracy, believe in our representative republic, and want to sustain it. Now, we want to improve it, but we recognize that it's in danger of going the other way, and the other way is not going to be good for any of us. So, so what's happening? Besides yesterday, which kind of tasked me off just enjoying Easter. I was really, I was raised by a Catholic father and a Baptist mother, and my grandfather's a Southern Baptist minister from Monroe, Louisiana. So on Sundays, I had to go to mass at 10:30, and then my mom would wait for me, and we'd be late to church. My mom was singing in a choir in Baptist church, so I was in church all day, all my life on Sundays. And Easter Sunday just happened to be one of those Sundays that both Catholics and Baptists, that's a very important day. So I took it to heart, and I actually I spoke about this, and I wrote an article about this too. I wrote an article about I was so moved by some of the so-called Christians. I call them fake Christians too, but so-called Christians that were condemning the proclamation of or the acknowledgement of transgender day of visibility, because I think it's so important to my faith and the Christian faith to embrace it. And aligning with the teachings of Jesus Christ, especially on Easter, which is a day of compassion, a day of redemption, a day of forgiveness, and a day that we remind each other to caution against judgment, because we are not each other's judge. Like, the judgment happens to our souls and our spirit, after our lives are over. So I was glad that Easter happened to fall on March 31st this year. It won't again until 2086. So, but I was glad because it meant separating and discerning between people who take their faith seriously and people who take it as folly, or actually make it political. And I don't think faith is political. That being said, I think there's hypocrisy and irony in a lot of things that are happening today. Now, today is a difficult day because sometimes you see posts and you like, I've actually been caught believing a couple posts and I forgot today was April Fool's. So I'm glad I almost reposted something that was totally false. And some people that were posting articles, I believed them and I was about to go off on them. And like it was like I read the article and it was like it's April Fool's. I'm like, oh shit, you asshole. I totally forgot. So somebody posted an article about Amy Coney Barrett being a stalwart and hero for women's issues, and I was like about to write, but I said let me read this article that said April Fool's. I was like, oh my god, I forgot his name, but he I can't believe I got
So,
caught
so,
today.
so they got you, in other words.
Oh, they got me. I was like, how could you believe Amy Coney Barrett is like a hero for women's rights? The hell? So I think last name is Willis. So but there's some serious stuff happening. There's some serious stuff happening. Trump is filing a motion with Judge Merchan, a pretrial motion at that, and claiming that he's not going to receive a fair trial because due to publicity of all of his cases. He doesn't believe he can receive a fair trial. They've done some surveys, and their survey information came back that he couldn't receive a fair trial. At least he believes. Now, I made several comments like over the last couple of days that have gotten under the skin of a lot of people on the far right. So, which is not abnormal for me. Sometimes I piss off people on the far left too when I talk about reparations. But hey, I stick to my principles. But the thing is, when you're going to trial, when you're a criminal defendant in trial, one of the last things you want to do is piss off the trial judge, because a lot of what goes into a trial happens before the trial even starts. Meaning, there's these things called motion and limines, and there's other pretrial motions where you ask the court to dismiss. And those motions, the standard of review for those motions are judicial discretion, meaning within the law, the judge, as long as it's lawful, the judge has the discretion to decide whether a case should move on or not. The judge can't just arbitrarily say no or yes, this case moves on. He has to have a legal basis, but there's some wiggle room in argument to be made in these motions to dismiss motion, for all these reasons. So it just struck me as odd that this, I call him a jackass. This jackass of a defender, after a week of stochastically terrorizing this judge's daughter, going to ask him to dismiss the case, which, by the way, like I said, the standard review is discretion, right? So it's the judge's call. As long as he's impartial and does it by law, it's fine. But you're asking the judge to do you a favor as a defendant, or to reach a little bit further to do you a favor. And I just find that quite odd. I mean, it's just like a weird thing. Like this dude is a weirdo. I call him a jackass, but he's a weirdo. Like after all that, after going after this judge and the prosecutors, you're gonna ask the judge. The judge wants to go to trial as much as the prosecution does at this point. Now, I'm not calling into question his biasness or his impartiality, but he's not going to do Trump any favors. He's not going to do the defendant. And let me stop calling him Trump. He's not going to do the criminal defendant any favors because of all this stuff that's going on. And also, the irony is that you are the one that's making it more publicized, but you're saying that you can't get a fair trial because it's too publicized. So you're the one that's causing this ruckus, or causing all this stuff to be in the public ire, or public square. But then you're saying, hey, it's too public, so please, let's hold off on this case till everything dies down. At least until, I guess what, after the election. And I think here's the thing, and this is something we talked about before, and I think we talked about it last year. I think I might have said it. I'm not sure. I said, everybody's saying this case is a weak case. Everybody's saying this is the weakest of all the cases. And I remember saying last year, and remember, Judge Merchan had this case for a whole year. We've been talking about this hush money case for a whole year. I said, this might be the case that takes him down, because it's the only one that's actually a state case that can go to trial soon. We see what's happening in the Georgia case. So in that Georgia case, I love Fonnie Willis. That case is in messy stage right now. She's got to get it together. We see what's happening in Mar-a-Lago. They should have done a motion to recuse Judge Cannon as soon as she got the case. They took a chance. They were betting on time, but time is no longer on their side, and it's too late to ask her to recuse herself unless she does something egregious. And she's very carefully not. It was interesting to learn that two of her law clerks quit. over the last year. It's very rare that a federal law clerk that's clerking for a district judge quits in the middle of their 1 year commitment. I mean, that's telling that they don't want to be a part of something they don't think is going to help their career any. So I mean, it's very rare. I mean, you don't. I mean, one person quit because I think she was having she got pregnant. She was having a child, but she could have finished out her term. But she was like, it's not even worth it. And the other person just quit. There's no reason. There's no reason being publicized why they did. But she's on her third and fourth law clerk over the last year. I want to emphasize so much that these little things mean the biggest things, right? That you any a federal clerkship is like the cream of the that's like that sets your whole career up. It doesn't matter like it does matter the judge you clerk for, but you need the judge you clerk for to have like a future or have some sense or like maybe be a future appellate judge or they not be so as bad as Cannon and they quit in the middle of their term. You don't ever see that happening, man. Like you don't get that chance again to be another federal clerk. So that is something that I learned over the last week. That's important. But like I said before, these cases, and also we have this April, so April 15th, the jury selection starts. We have all these pretrial motions are going to be happening between now and next week, and then we have motion limites, and then voir dire. The initial stages of voir dire is going to start next week, meaning jury questionnaires are going to be. The jury questionnaires are going to be finalized. They might even be finalized right now. There are initial questions that each attorney submits to the court. They come to an agreement on what the initial questions are going to be. These are questions that all the prospective jurors have to answer before they even sit down in court, like to eliminate bias. Remember, it's not the question is, can you be fair? Not whether you support Trump, not whether you voted for Trump, not whether you support the DA, hate the DA. It's whether you can be fair and listen to the evidence and make a decision based upon the evidence. The question is not, all these outer things. It's in New York, and New York juries, as passed this prologue. That's why he fears this. And let me say one more thing. It's also weird because this case is gonna go to trial. It's also weird that upon conviction, this is the sentencing judge too. And so when you take into consideration that he's, like I said, stochastically terrorizing his daughter, this is the guy that's going to sentence you when you're. I mean, that can remand you into custody upon a guilty verdict. This is a felony. These are 31 felonies he's charged. So these it could be like 10 years prison, or it could be something significant that he has to he's home confinement at Mar-a-Lago for pending sentencing if he wants to continue. Right, that takes him all the way through. He has to stay at Mar-a-Lago. Homeboy's got the campaign on YouTube and IG. I mean, this is a very serious trial, and but I also think as we close up too a little bit, one of the other things that's coming to fruition is that Judge Cannon still has not set a trial date, which is concerning because I think she's waiting for the Supreme Court and Judge Chutkin's case to come out so she can fuck up that scheduling too. I think what's happening with Judge Cannon is that she sees that she can interrupt two cases by setting a trial date that she's not going to stick to. That will be continued until after the election. What she's trying to do, and I think that I think what she's trying to do is like so. April 22nd, oral argument. All the Supreme Court briefs are going to be, actually, the initial Supreme Court brief is going to be due next week by Trump, and then the response by Jack Smith's team, and then the oral arguments on the 22nd. We expect some kind of opinion, within 30 days. I mean, they said they're going to expedite it, so it could be even 15 days. Right now, they said they wanted more time because they have, this Supreme Court has district court argument, Judge Chutkin's opinion. They have circuit court arguments from the DC circuit, and then that opinion, and then they've been able to read transcripts of both oral arguments. So they should be ready to deliver an opinion within a couple of weeks. It actually might even start already being, some of the drafts should already be written the direction that some of the respective justices want to go. There might even be some kind of sharing of ideas on the direction they want to be in. So, this should happen fast. There's no reason why it should take more than 30 days to come out with an opinion here. But once they do, let's say May 22nd, they come out with the opinion and they come up with a mandate within 5 days of that opinion, and it goes back to Judge Chutkin for setting Then Judge Chutkan's going to, she promised Trump's team 8 months. There's 2 months left on their 8 months. So let's say she sets a trial date. Let's say it comes out on May 22nd. I'm willing to bet you Judge Cannon is going to set a trial date for late July for the Mar-a-Lago case, and then that will force Judge Chutkan to set a later date for the DC case, which could be in August or could be even in September, because the DOJ rule about presidents and not charging them once they're indicted and there's a trial, that doesn't apply. It's just about the investigation portion, the DOJ memo. Once there's an indictment and there's a trial process, that memo goes out the door. So even if the trial starts, the trial can start the week before the election. As far as the DOJ is concerned, so that's where we're at as far as like these legalities. I think the intensity of the matter is going to pick up, like we talked about 6 months ago. And the boring part wasn't so boring because we had all this action. But again, we're still facing delay tactics by the former guy's team. They're going to delay as much as possible. We're going to see an intensity in pretrial motions whose intent is to delay. In this Manhattan case, in the Georgia case, we're already seeing that. In the DC Circuit case, the Supreme Court decided to do it. I hope they expedite within 2 weeks. I gave them 30 days. I hope they come out like in the beginning of May or within a week and say denied, and here's why. That would advance things. I don't think that the Mar-a-Lago case, honestly, with Cannon, not only is she inexperienced, she's obviously biased to the casual observer. You don't even have to be a legal scholar or anything like that. You can tell she's like on the side of Trump. She wants to dismiss this case. Her rulings they don't make any sense. It's almost like how did you become a federal judge? It's still a question that many of us have. Other than that, we're in the heart and soul of campaigning, and I still feel good about the Biden Harris administration and what they're doing, and the position they're in right now, and the position that Trump is in right now. Like if you followed me today, I spent most of my day trying to figure out how the hell this IPO happened. And I'm calling upon all my finance friends to, can you give me, I'm a fifth grader. Can you talk to me like I'm a fifth grader and let me know what the hell is a meme stock? Never even heard of that shit. So I'm like, come on, tell me something, man. How is this happening? What's the SEC doing? Why they give them what is the SEC for then? I mean, Bernie Madoff must be turning in his grave like, what the fuck? You killed my life for this? Like, Bernie's like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. This is what I tried to do. And so I don't know what's going on with the SEC, but and Biden's and Harris's second term, they're going to have to clean up these, the DOJ, the SEC, all these administrations that are supposed to be regulating people. They got to clean this stuff up because we have to come out of this second term of Biden Harris on a clean slate. I want conservative and liberal arguments to go back to the way they used to be about policy, and not all these lies and mistruths and just like performative politics is too much. It's too much, and I don't think our country can handle that. I think we're at the brink of being able to handle all this stuff, especially with the social media the way it is, and platforms pushing one side. It's just too much. So I want to get back to normal, get back to advocacy on similar facts. Like we agree on the facts. Let's argue about policy. I want to get back to that. Also to the rule of law, because sometimes it hurts us, sometimes it helps us. But I want to get back to the rule of law and people abiding by their constitutional oaths and their duties. And if not, get them out of office. So with that, happy April Fool's Day. I have nothing foolish to say. Like Governor Wes Moore said when he was being interviewed by the CNN correspondent Dina or Dinah or whatever her name is. I have no time for the foolish. So we don't have time for foolishness at all either. So with that, I'm a DEI myself out of this space, or at least out of the speaker position, and keep on listening to our rollout. And like I said, I'm a DEI myself out.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't remember what his reclaiming and reframing of DEI was, but I loved it too. Because it is, like I said, these right wing libertarian conservatives seeking to destroy our democracy have had a long range plan, and they have worked on it in a very incremental way. But with the former guy, they had an opportunity to really start putting some of those things forth, and they would like to finish the job. And as someone else talked to it, it's going to be very important for us to win this election, to hold on to our democracy. But the work will not stop there. There is so much work to do to repair the damage that was done by the former guy in his last administration, and also the damage that he's doing in his run to hold that office again. And like you, I was intrigued by the meme stock. I read an article and I was like, what the heck? Because I couldn't figure out why it was even allowed as well. But basically, it just seems like a vehicle, and I am by no means an economic major or student, but my understanding was that it's just someone who has basically created kind of the perfect vehicle to set their prices the way they want. And it's just a good avenue for them to manipulate the stock, and kind of do what a lot of hedge fund folks have done for a long time, but they have to seek it out. Whereas the kind of organization that he's created with this Trump media thing is one that does it for itself. Like the whole thing is just a Ponzi scheme that has been legitimized.
Exactly. And I remember this actually is a funny story. It may not be funny, but it's kind of dark humor. I was, because I have an economics undergrad degree, I was asked if I wanted to do white collar crime. I was like, oh no, I do murder. I just do murder, gang murders. I do murder, complex murders. And like, it's like, wait, are you like Bubba Gump murder? I was like, I was like, yeah. So no white collar crime. I don't deal with the numbers, man. Economics was it for me. I do the murders.
I heard that. But we appreciate the brilliance that you bring, and the insight that you bring to the legal cases that we are facing that are very much affecting our democracy. And I will often tweet that, it's not like when fascism comes, or if it comes, it is here. And what we are experiencing is we are in the judiciary phase of it, where they start to dismantle the judiciary system and to make us not believe and have faith in the judiciary system. The same with our election integrity, and the same with the media. They want us not to believe, and they started it very early, right in the beginning days. He was calling the media the fake media. His senior advisor coined the alternative facts. They're priming us for the authoritarian takeover, and just kind of desensitizing us. It's a slow boiling frog, but I mean, I fear that, the frog is almost cooked, and we have to wake up and also recognize that once we get it out of the pot, it's going to be a lot of stuff and work, because even though we keep him out of office, and I do still feel very optimistic, as bleak and dark as things are, and the crazy things that are happening, I do believe that we will win, because the harm that so many of their laws, and keep in mind that these are people like the Heritage Foundation is, of course, the author of the Project 2025, but their ideology is very much steeped in libertarianism, and understand like all of the forces, the dark money, and the period of time that they have had to work and to perfect these ideas. It's really kind of anarchy type of thinking, because they are to the right of Republicans. Like they want no regulations. And I don't think a lot of people who are touting, the free market kind of ideology and things and just let people make money and stuff, they are not thinking it through to its ultimate conclusion. Because what that means is a company like DuPont, which was here in our state forever, and there's some others, have the opportunity to dump their toxin, their waste, and to do all sorts of things. And there are no repercussions. And the people in those communities suffer, and there is no recourse for them because it's allowed. And this is what they want. They want no regulation, and Charlie Kirk has been working for over 10 years now on college campuses to help uneducate and propagandize a lot of students who are now young voters who have taken on this ideology that has been implanted in them in the form of this young guy, this young whippersnapper who was absolutely funded by a rich conservative billionaire to push this agenda. So they have been working on it a long time. And that's, again, and just another point that I like people to understand that it has been a long game for them. They are just now in the stage where all of their previous work is now being able to come to fruition and for them to just act upon it, which is why you have places like Tennessee where they actually have the total reign of power. They can just shove these very, very authoritarian laws and things down our throat and in place because they have the reins of power. And some of them are in other places, they're willing to begin that incremental work by taking over a school board, a county commission, a city council, and do their work there. They are invested in the infrastructure to destroy our democracy. And so we have to be as committed to building an infrastructure to strengthen and sustain our democracy and to counter the infrastructure that they have in place that they have worked so long to build. And that's what we're up against. So I appreciate you being in the fight, Mark, and helping to educate and inform us for the fight as well. So that is what is going to be required from us, not just after, not just to get us to November of this year and this election, but even afterward, because the work doesn't stop. And that is the message that I continue to try to pass on to people. Like it is a continual work that we have to do because just how we got here by people not being paying attention and being okay thinking things were just kind of running on auto. Yes, they will, but not in your favor if you are not involved and in the system or have a seat at the table to help shape how it runs because they have thrown all kinds of cogs in the wheel, so to speak. So Joseph, I see your hand up.
Well,
I'm
real,
gonna go
real,
to go
real
ahead,
quick,
Mark.
just real quick before Joe. I'm sorry, Justin. Justice Sotomayor wants to retire. She's not helping, and she's in the next term. If Biden wins, she'll be stepping down, and then Biden will be able to name another Supreme Court justice. If by chance, by I don't think it's going to happen, but if by chance the other person wins, she might have to step down because of her health issue. So I mean, if y'all really want to break it down, you want seven conservative judges. I mean, it'll take 3 generations to undo that.
Right,
So
because yeah, whatever we do at the local level will just be undone because it is the supreme law of the land. And thank you for adding that in the conversation. I had kind of thought about that, thinking some of the information and stories that I've seen. So thank you for adding that in the conversation, Mark. And again, it just shows you the importance of this election and how it has long-lasting, damaging effects. And it people should be aware of just what happened with the three Supreme Court justice changes, and be able, this is where, like 2K said, the critical thinking come in, like connect the dots here, folks. Don't you see? There's the pattern, and it's like they don't have to keep winning elections, because if they have the court captured, even when Democrats are in charge and in control, they can undo the laws and things that they put in place. I mean, and I've seen that here in my state, where Nashville, even though the state maybe leaned red, our city, Nashville, Memphis, and a couple others were more democratic. And what did they do when they were in charge? They broke up um, the city of Nashville. They gerrymandered it. And, so that lost us any representation, because we were always assured at least one Democrat, at least from this area. But and then they weren't happy there. That's at the federal level. They went on to basically, just like they just did with TSU, where they vacated the entire board, what they did was they split the city council in half, just arbitrarily passed a law that would, a city council that was a 40 members council was reduced in half, to, again, take away the voice and the power of the majority of the people that live here. So, like I said, we just have to keep our head on a swivel and understand, again, what's at stake, what we're dealing with. So I'm going to go back around. I'm going to go to Joseph, and then get Danny to chime in here again, because she was on a roll. I know people love to hear from her, and I'm sure she has probably some more things that she can add to the conversation based on the things that we have shared since she spoke. So we'll go to Joseph and then back to Danny.
Thank you, Ms. D. There is something that I saw on the timeline that I kind of want to tie in a little bit to our discussion today, and then I kind of want to build on a couple of things that Ann Ngazi had said. So you've probably seen in the timeline that today was the annual Easter egg roll at the White House. And what I didn't know, and it was put in the timeline, that the first president that the president that started this tradition was President Rutherford B. Hayes. Well, President Hayes was also president when the infamous Compromise of 1877 took place, which was a result of the hotly contested 1876 election. Some of us will know that the Compromise of 77 is what led to the end of Reconstruction, and what myself, and I know many of us agree, that the ending of Reconstruction is what not only set the stage for Jim Crow South, but really led to a domino effect of things that we're seeing today. So that stuck in my mind, and it's for whatever reason, the Compromise of 1877 has always stuck in my mind since I learned in my high school American history class, and I didn't fully realize its ramifications at the time, but I fully realized it 4 years ago when so much of the chaos happened, and it truly did set the stage for so much of what we're seeing, and we are still paying the price today. And I will tell you why, is because the Confederacy was not completely smashed after the Civil War, and not only that, after Reconstruction ended, the Confederacy was romanticized. We've seen it in books, we've seen it in movies, we've seen it in TV. There is nothing to romanticize the Confederacy. You don't see in Germany them romanticize Nazis. You don't see them in Germany romanticizing the communism in East Germany. Okay, why in this country people decided to romanticize the Confederacy, I'll have no idea. But it should have been tossed the trash can of history, and I feel very strong.
Well,
And then,
it was very intentional, but go ahead and continue.
oh yes, absolutely, absolutely, it was intentional. I agree 100% on. The white supremacists just couldn't get over the fact that they lost, and they will continue to lose, because ultimately, they will be on the wrong side of history, just like they've been on the wrong side of history since day one in this country. But to kind of also build on what Danny and Ngazi said, I've got nowhere to run either if things go bad in this country. I guess technically I could go to Mexico. Technically, I could gain Mexican citizenship because my mom was born there, but I really don't know Mexico. I've never really been in my lifetime apart from just going to Baja. Now, of course, I wouldn't have problems with the language barrier, but it's a different, there's a big difference between, Mexican Americans and Mexicans from Mexico. There is a definite cultural difference. I could go to Canada. I have friends there, but there's speculation that when they have their next election, that the Conservatives are going to win a majority in Parliament. Well, their Conservatives are bit by bit becoming like the Republicans here. So that's like going from the frying pan to the fire. And I just don't really have the resources to go somewhere very far. Now, I have a cousin that lives in Australia that he has dual citizenship that could probably help me establish residency in a pinch, but I've never been to Australia. It's like, completely different culture, completely different way of life, and I just don't have the resources to do it. And here's the thing, we shouldn't even feel like we would have to, but the problem is that Trump and all the Republicans are just so dangerous that they've got us thinking about the what. And if this isn't a motivating factor for people to get out and vote, I don't know what is. I really don't. And with that, I will land my plane.
Well, I totally agree with you on that. And I have heard people say that. But also, like, if we lose our democracy, as you just alluded to, it will be a domino effect. There will be authoritarian regimes rising across the world. The other thing is think about the isolationist viewpoint that is part and parcel of these authoritarian regimes and movements. Just like during the Holocaust, it was not easy for Jews to come to this country. Like, some of them were turned away. So if there is a mass exodus here, I'm not so sure that there will be countries that are open to taking in a bunch of disaffected, Americans. So I don't know why people think that, running somewhere else is the answer, because, like you said, it could be worse, but you just could not be accepted because this conservative movement has cracked down on the acceptance of immigrants from other places. So you don't think that they will think about that, and some of them will not take on that same ideology, like, yeah, no, we don't want you Americans over here. We don't want you in our country. And so a very good point, Joseph, and I appreciate it. And so with that, we'll go to Danny and then Ziggy.
So I have my earpiece in. If you guys can't hear me, just let me know and I'll say.
Okay, we can hear you fine.
But to piggyback on that, if it's not make America a community, it's let's tear everything down except for who's going to start over, who's going to be as well, and can we trust that what was all the rights that were fought for are going to be put back in place, or are we going to go all 77 where only certain gender or a certain skin color were protected? There's too many unknowns, and I can't trust the American people, not the people on the left, not the people on the right, people who are just completely disinterested in our democracy, to leave it to y'all to figure this out. I'm all for our democracy work for more absolute. But to tear it all down, let's try comedy this week. And if that doesn't work, maybe we'll try fascism next week. You're on your own. Sorry, I'm not doing that. I can't get by. I don't care that it's just not an option. So no, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that Joe Biden, make sure that all the rights that have already been fought for are protected, and that it continues to go further so that more people, anything less than that, I can't understand. Yes, it is scary when you have to, okay, if Donald Trump does win, what does that for a lot of us? Are we going to have to go? And, I thought of this weekend, right? I mean, yes, it was Easter weekend, but it was also a fundraiser for President Biden, the other two cool presidents with him, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Then you do on the opposite side, and you're like, okay, who's with Donald? Nobody, not even W. And not saying that I like George Bush, but the fact that he has remained so quiet. And this is my problem when I say the party. It doesn't even require that's elected. The people that were there 20, 30 years ago, the true Republic, the true GOP, they've all been silent. Made me also think of when they were separating the children. I think it took Laura Bush finally after ProPublica their audio, their recording and their reporting on what was happening. She finally spoke up, and then others. And I don't know why it took so for them to finally say. And even now, even with Donald Trump threat Joe Biden with that, he's literally putting the target on him. And I get he has secrets. You know, he's probably the most protected person in this country, but still, the fact that he is comfortable enough to put. I remember, I'm old. Remember when Sarah Palin put the crosshair photo out? That was a big issue. She had to, retract that. They had to go out, campaign had to say something about that. And the fact that now here it is, all these years later, he's just allowed to, okay, well, yeah, there's no bottom. No, still try to hold him accountable, even when he does shit like that. It requires, yeah. So enough about Trump, but I will just say, and I spoke enough already, and I want to thank everyone for the well wishes. I appreciate it in the DM. But it really is important that we try to hold on to this. It is all we, and I don't want to live in America where we don't have or anything less. I am not under any illusion that this country still needs a lot of work, but this is the best that we have. And when you look at trying it into a communist country, faster, if you're wanting to flirt with socialism because you think you're going to get free health care and all this other stuff, you need to look at the other social countries. They all and better norm. Then you also know who they put in power to manifest, make sure that their ideals are. Look how long Germany ago. Russia is still struggling on trying, and based on this latest election, they're probably. Do you want that for it? Who's going to be charged under a communist America? It can't be Donald. It can't be Roger Taylor. It is going to be a free for all of who going to decide how do you even pick that, and how can you trust, and what does that mean for all the right for? Are we going to have to start the ground zero again? I don't trust anybody. So yeah, we're going to do every say this tomorrow. It is not perfect, but it's what we have, is what we know, is what we have always strived. It can be better. A democracy, access to the ballot, need people that's willing to fight for it, and it also good, fair, balance, journalism, and all. So we want to take a look at it and how journalism has played a part in it. It gives us a gives us a guide on what to do now. To try to strip that away and take it away, part of my language is ass backwards. It doesn't make sense. You're going against common, and right now we cannot afford that. Not while Donald Trump is still trying, and it's going to require that a lot to do better. So for that, everyone, for allowing the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Danny. Again, always such salient points and just nuanced takes that I think help people to understand and spark their imaginations and thoughts. And that's always a good thing. That's part of critical thinking. It's important. Like, we don't all have to think the same way, but Lord, we all need to be thinking. And the thing of it is as you said, no, our democracy is not perfect. And our democracy is only as strong as each individual citizen's participation in it. And unfortunately, we're in an era where people don't think that they should have to participate. And some, in fact, some are choosing not to, and they think that that's okay. And they have these ideas and things that they want people to get behind and follow. But I'm sorry, I just don't follow people who do not have good plans. Like, tear it all down is not a good plan for me, especially when you have nothing else to replace it with. Just the idea that almost basically anything's better than nothing. No, I'm sorry, because when nothing is there, the void that will be filled with the nothingness will likely be worse than we could ever imagine. So think, people, think. I appreciate you so much, Danny, and I hope you don't go anywhere. We're going to start to wrap up shortly, but I have a couple of new speakers that I'm very anxious to hear from. That is Ziggy, and then Mud Puppy, my dark money friend. I've been trying to get her up. I know she's working and busy, and trying to get her ready for another conversation about dark money, because unfortunately, that's who is running our democracy right now. It's the rich corporations. This is why and how we got here. Okay. So I love that this is her area of passion, like journalism is Danny's, which makes this community, this group, so wonderful. Marx is legal. We all have different areas of interest, expertise, and experience that we can come together and share with one another, which makes us all wiser and much better for it. So thank you, Danny, for your, like nuanced, relatable commentary on media that I think is so very vital and missing from a lot of spaces conversation. So I'm glad that you take time to come in and join us in our conversation here. So up next, Ziggy and then Mud Puppy.
Actually, I think Mud Puppy had her hand up first, so I can defer to her. So.
All right. Well, Mud Puppy, you go. How gentlemanly of you, Ziggy. Thank you so very much.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Siggy. I appreciate it. Hello, Miss D and Miss Soul Sister and everyone else. I hope you're having a great Monday. I really didn't want to speak too much because I actually wanted to play a 1 minute and 45-second clip for you guys. Because, again, not we, but the media tends to talk about Trump, Trump, Trump. And this is Leonard Leo giving a speech at, I believe, Benedictine College recently because his hair is extremely gray, which makes me happy. I guess being an evil asshole ages you. But anyway, let me go ahead and play this for you guys and then, get your opinion and feedback. It has been a boon and a blessing beyond the shadow of a doubt. So some of you will be tempted to find the next sanctuary, especially when confronted by modern day barbarians, secularists, and bigots. The barbarians are determined to threaten and delegitimize individuals and institutions who refuse to pledge fealty to the woke idols of our age. The secularists are fine with Catholics in the public square, so long as we don't practice our faith. They want us to draw the curtains at home and keep it in the pew, and it remains to be seen how long accept. And the progressive bigots distort who we are and what we believe in, and will go so far as to intimidate or harass us in public in an effort to drive us professional and social exile. Your time here, like Benedict's time of isolation, has really prepared you well to meet our culture's challenges and to embrace the new evangelization freely, with zeal and with joy. As Jesus said, your light must shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your heavenly Father. As such, you must not think of the wayward souls of our culture as lost or beyond hope, nor should you abandon them or refuse to come to their aid, especially when they fail to see how in danger you are. Instead, you and I and every Christian must try to lead people back to the right path, the path of faith, hope, and love. Hopefully, we live to see a day when we can rejoice at their return and welcome them back. Do you know the U.S. solar company's nasty little... Yeah, so that was Leonard Leo, who I, tend to report on. Well, I don't report, but, research him.
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead and embrace that. You are a citizen journalist who follows and reports on Leonard Leo's shenanigans and the things that he's doing and it's involved in. So, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just found that very alarming because essentially referring to anyone who is not a Catholic as a barbarian. And this is the guy who, is funding all of the groups who are involved in Project 2025. So again, I'm trying to beat this into everyone's head and not physical. But we need to recognize that Trump is a symptom. He is not the problem. And we need to start focusing our attention on the problem, which Leonard Leo is definitely one of the biggest problems in this country. So we really need to focus on taking him down monetarily, and hopefully he'll be in prison one day. But
I totally agree. And like you said, he is a big one, but he's not the only one because the big one, it's the Council for National Policy, of which he is just one member. And you focus on Leo like I focus on the Kochs. And part of the reason I focus on the Kochs is because they have been very busy in helping to dismantle democracy and undo things here in Tennessee, like their Americans for Prosperity are very much behind the voucher scam here. They are bullying people. They are bullying lawmakers, not just, average citizen, but lawmakers. They are willing to invest. They have offered people to run against Republicans who are just not supporting their voucher scam. They have threatened them with an opponent, willing to fund that opponent to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars in, like very, very small towns, because this is what, this is the mechanism they have found to push their agenda. And they are paying volunteers to go out and act as if, like Moms for Liberty, that they are some grassroots folks who are just volunteering, but they are not volunteering. They are being paid like $20 an hour to go knock on doors and do things. And this is not, sorry if I get a little animated here, because this isn't the first time that they've interfered in something so critical and damaging to my state, because they did this a few years ago, I think maybe 2018, when we had a ballot initiative to expand transportation, the public transportation system here, which sucks. And they actually did the same thing. They ran a campaign funding volunteers to go out and basically push their propaganda to get people to vote against their own interests, and this is what they do. And so this is why I love for you to come up, join us in the conversation. I love that you spread that information and knowledge around. And I love having conversations with you about it, because again, yeah, Trump is just he's the puppet. He's Putin's puppet, and he is the puppet of the big donors that have their authoritarian agenda. So he's just the front man, basically. But it is the people, and this is another thing where, of course, all of these things came to be because of Citizens United. So I would like for us to make sure that we get a Democratic trifecta at the federal level. We can start addressing some of these things that have been captured by the court, and these tendencies that we're moving toward, and we can start to undo it, and they won't be undone overnight, because we didn't get here overnight. But I think that in part of the fixing and undoing, it's very critical that we understand where the problem lies, who's behind it. And so again, like I said, it is a subject that I love to talk about, because people don't recognize that the Tea Party, the whole reason that they even gained, because they were just fringe, outraged people, demonstrating the typical white backlash when Obama got elected, and doing emails and things amongst themselves and stuff. But they got to political positions because of the funding of the Kochs. They actually said that they were sorry that they supported these guys, but they're there now. They're entrenched. So they have only gotten stronger. And even though they say they hate it, they hate the crassness of Trump and the crazy of some of these people, but they are absolutely willing to use them to continue to further their agenda, which they absolutely do. Go ahead, Mud Puppy.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, thank you for saying the Cokes. I am not as focused on them, but I know that they are intertwined with Leonard Leo, very much so. I was just going to say that I did a space, I don't know, a month ago. I think you were there for a little bit, Misty, where I played the podcast of Greg Olear interviewing, who is now, I guess, my Twitter friend, Tom Carter, who actually worked for Leonard Leo for 3 years. And, it's very sad to me because he attempted to ring the alarm bells about Leonard in 2014. He spoke to, I believe, somewhere between 7 to 10 Pulitzer Prize winning journalists who, didn't report on Leonard. And I often wonder what life would be like had they actually listened to him and done a deep dive. but then we still have the Cokes.
Yeah, and actually, the Kochs were here before Leo. They have a very long history and track record. Their father worked for Stalin and Hitler. They were raised by a Nazi nanny. So they're libertarian. And again, I talk about Project 2025 not being a new idea. Like, it is just a modern iteration of the Conservative Manifesto, which was created by libertarians like the John Birch Society and those folks. They created that manifesto as a pushback and a backlash to FDR's Green New Deal. And again, here's history rhyming. They are pushing back against modern advancements that we have made in this country to for diversity and equality, and especially marginalized groups. And they, for whatever reason, it's a scarcity mentality. It's like when other people get more, they for some reason feel that it's going to lessen their piece of the pie, but they already have basically the whole the half the pie, but they're not willing to share it with anyone, and it just deepens their actions against any advancement for any other society. And again, that's why I focus on the Kochs, because they have had a long lasting established foothold into this dark money agenda. Leo came and became a problem because of the Federalist Society and their push and achievement to capture the courts, again, because this is one of the pillars of authoritarianism, to capture the judiciary and the media. But the Kochs have been working at it for a very long time. Leonard got funded by that guy from Chicago, the billionaire. So it gave him a lot of power and control, of which he is using. But people need to understand, like the Kochs, remember, do you all remember when Obama got his shellacking in 2010? And we lost seats. It was not because people, I mean, part of it was because people weren't voting, but it was designed, it was funded. It was a campaign that was funded by the Kochs and other dark money groups. They had a strategy, like they have Project 2025 now. At that time, they had what they call the Red Map strategy. And that strategy was funded by about 400 billionaires, of which the Kochs were a major one. I don't know how much Leo played, how much of a role he played in that. I'll have to go back and do a little research. But their strategy then, which they are building on now, and this is why I say incrementalism works. And this is how they've gotten here. Their strategy was to focus on getting power in red states, and taking over the state houses in southern states especially. And they won about 400 seats out of that. So it gave them a base from which they continue to build on. So I think it's important. Like I said, I love that you continue digging into his shenanigans and informing us, because he's not the only one. So we all have our areas that we dig into, but it is important that we understand all of the players involved and the effect that they're having. So thank you so much. And you have to get with me. I sent you a DM. I guess I should have sent you a text, but we have to plan for our next episode, okay? Because it's time. And I know you have a lot of information to share. So, guys, Mud Puppy is a great follow for all things Leonard Leo and Dark Money. She does a great job. And I really appreciate that she comes and shares that information with us, because it is very important. Again, like, we see what's happening, but we need to definitely understand the players involved in creating, what's happening, who are orchestrating it, I should say. So with that, we'll go to Ziggy next, and then I'll give Danny and Joseph an opportunity for some closing thoughts, and my fabulous co-host, and we'll start to wrap up a great conversation that we've had here today.
Yes, well, thank you for bringing me up, Dee and Sol, and everybody else on the dais. I raised hand because it's like, yes, there was discussion of what if we actually find it desirable to move out, and it's like it has happened before in the country, not to any large extent per se, but I mean, historically, it was like after the Civil War, there was a lot of it, in that a lot of the people of color that were recently freed and whatever did not stick around to go through Reconstruction. I mean, they basically did what they could. Some did it with playing the game for a bit and then moving, but a lot of them moved west and north. That because they weren't going to stick around and put up with the segregation and whatever that was happening in the Deep South after the war and whatever. And more recently, it was during the Vietnam War and whatever, there were a lot of conscientious objectors that did try to go to Mexico and Canada and whatever. And while those countries did accept a lot of them and whatever at first, by the time after 2 or 3 years or whatever, it was like, no, this is a bit too much. And they started to stop accepting people getting out of the country that didn't want to be drafted for the war, kind of thing. And that's the most recent, and that's the kind of thing. Even more recently, after when COVID was going on, it was a lot of, yes, shut the borders. We are not letting you in because the U.S. is screwing things up and how the virus is being handled and whatever. And no, we do not want you. And for a lot of countries, I think that will be happening around the globe also. That yes, your screw up is your problem, not ours. If it's politically, the GOP gets control of the governments again recently. I mean, if GOP changes down the road, maybe it will go back to the status quo, but as the kind of thing that, at this point, the indications with Project 2025 is if they do get in, things will get worse, and there may be no place for people to go because the other countries will say, that is your problem, not ours. And so that's basically just the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and very good points indeed. And I think Joseph had alluded to this too. They have romanticized their loss. It's called the lost cause. Look it up. And he was right. Germany didn't romanticize fascism. They did not erect statues. And one of the organizations that was very much a part of that romanticizing were the United Daughters of the Confederacy. Okay, much like the modern day Moms of Liberty. And one of the major areas that they focused on was education, which when I understood the history of that organization, it's one of, when you live long enough and you start to see these parallels, the rhyming of things, I instantly recognize Moms for Liberty and their behavior being very much like that of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. They worked on school board curriculums, and some of which were instilled and were not able to be taken out of the curriculums of schools until the 1970s. And they started this in the 1800s. They romanticized and worshiped and were inspired by the Ku Klux Klan. Both of these organizations were founded in Tennessee. So again, that is another reason why I speak about them a lot, because I am a history nerd. I do know my Tennessee history, and I continue to try to understand it more and more because it has ripple effects for our country. And the other thing that the UDC did was their monuments, because they knew that, you know, it would be very hard to take them down, and it would start to instill this ideology in people, just seeing it. And they were, establishing this sense of pride and romanticism of a loss, a loss. But they reframed the narrative. And this is what, they're trying to do now with January 6th. I mean, we're not even, 5 years away from this, and they're already like, no, it wasn't an insurrection. It was just a riot and these kinds of things. And so when you have textbooks and things being written and talking about the benefits of slavery, and you have enough generations removed where they don't have someone who can speak to that in real life from lived experience, it's easy to reshape narratives and to get people to think crazy things about authoritarianism being an okay or not so bad thing. And what is also scary, Danny, a few weeks ago, I had read that we all remember and know that they passed a law to take out African American history AP classes and some other things. And I understand that they were working to pass a law to actually institute the teaching of communism. Okay. Now make that make sense for me. Now, like, they didn't want, yes, I'll have to find that story and send it to you. They didn't want high school students having African American classes and curriculums. And these are high school students, but they want to teach communism from K to 12. Yes. And I don't think for one moment that they would be teaching it in a factual way, considering the fact that they say slavery had benefits. I would be very interested in the kind of curriculum that they would put forth to teach communism, and why kindergartners need to start having a concept of communism, unless maybe, of course, it is to get people familiar and accepting of it being maybe a not so bad thing. I don't know, but it just doesn't sit right with me, and I see it as so dangerous. So, with that, I will say we are coming to the close of the space. I just want to thank you all for being here, all of the wonderful speakers that we have had, and for all of you who have been with us for a short while or the entire time. I want to thank you. I appreciate you. I see you. And it's important for us to continue to have these conversations, to be informed. And like I said, I'm reclaiming my time, the moniker, the DEI, and I am reframing it for me. It's doing everything to inform. So that's what Soul Sister and I try to do here each week. So, and also inform and inspire. So that's my DEI, and I am holding on to it. So, with that, I would just like to give Joseph an opportunity for some closing words and thoughts, then Danny, then my fabulous co host.
Well, thank you, Ms. Dia. I really appreciate that. It's been, as usual, another wonderful, thought-provoked debate. And, kind of what you just touched on and kind of what I said earlier, there is nothing romantic about either communism or fascism or the Confederacy. Nothing about any of that deserves side, because people suffered great under. People continue to suffer greatly under communist regime. People have suffered greatly under fascism. I mean, look at Europe for most of the 20th century. There was great suffering throughout most of the some form or another because of some form of authority. And what you said just now about kids as young as kindergarten learning about communism. I was in kindergarten when the Cold War was still going. As a matter of fact, my first couple of years in elementary school, a lot of times when I was at lunch, I would kind of pretend to myself that, I would see the wall around our yard at school, and I would act like it was the Berlin Wall and that I was trapped in Berlin and I would try to escape to West Berlin. And then, of course, when the wall came down, of course, that all changed. But it just because of things that I paid attention to at the time, it just knew that communism was wrong and that people were suffering. Under it. And so I don't understand what the romanticism of any type of authoritarian. There's nothing from, and we're getting hit with it from both sides, and so I think it's incumbent on all of us to make other people aware that there's, if this country falls into authoritarianism, we might not get it back. So they're the disaffected ones that say, oh, well, you always say that every election is most important. Well, yes, it is, because there's something that comes up every 4 years that makes it more important. I mean, even, once we defeat Donald Trump, there's still the MAGA residual that we're going to have to be dealing with for quite a long time. So we may defeat him, as I'm optimistic that we will in November, but we have to continue the fight to defeat the MAGA movement in general so that we can get back to, as Mark mentioned earlier, what was once the traditional debate about policy, but everybody could agree on facts. So with that, I land my plane. Ms. D, you gave me a wonderful idea for my next space. I'll kind of marinate on that a little bit and see when I can host it. But I think there needs to be a discussion about authoritarianism, different countries over the years, and examples of why it's so dangerous, so that people don't make the same mistakes here. So thank you, Ms. D. Thank you, Soul Sister. Again, it was a wonderful space as usual. Thank you for starting my Monday off on the right foot.
Well, thank you, Joseph. I appreciate you joining and helping it to be a great conversation. And I am just kind of like laughing about you imagining yourself behind the wall. Because again, I've told people I did see the wall, the Berlin Wall. I went to the Berlin Wall. I went to the Checkpoint Charlie Museum where they had examples of people who had died trying to escape. And I want people to understand, like, this wall was not some huge monstrosity that, just, no one could scale. It wasn't like the Eiffel Tower or anything. It was a very, very small, it wasn't very high. It had, barbed wire over it. But it was, able to be scaled and gotten over. People, made cars and things to try to escape, and people lost their lives. And the things that the people had to endure, what they did not have access to, I got to experience that. I spent a decade in Germany. I was there when the wall came down. So here's the other thing that when you were talking about that, that made me think that one of the first scary moments under the former guy's administration was when he started talking about the wall, because immediately that's where my mind went back to. And it wasn't like he was saying to keep people out. But see, I was in a country where that wall was used to keep people in. So the people talking about fleeing might not be able to leave as easily as they think. Okay. So I just want people to recognize that. So thank you again so much, and hope the rest of your day is awesome, and your week as well. And Danny, here for you for some wonderful closing thoughts for us.
One of the things to kind of go back, unfortunately, what the Confederate were able to do, they were able to kind of rewrite their part in war beliefs were, because then you have a fact people hundreds of years later that still believe Civil War was about state and not about. That's a problem that comes down to it also not providing adequate pushback when someone is not. It's almost like reporting by, oh, you're not giving the full context of what was. And now, even now, people still want to fly that Confederate flag. People still want to argue you down about states' rights. And then you ask states' rights to do what? They all get quiet. Some even say, oh, it was about tax. The North was taxed so much money, South couldn't afford it. Afford to do what? And again, they get quiet because no one has really held down. And I think that's probably the biggest flaw when it comes to democracy, was that we had enough at that time really cement what was, and to not have lied. And for many of them, they got their own, and they got to lie about in a small on a smaller scale. Kind of have trying to rewrite her own history of what she allowed herself to be a part of. No, she was not separating her children from their parents at the border, but she watched it go on. She knew it was happening. I'm sure she got intelligence of what, but she chose not to do it. And so you kind of see her come out and look Donald Trump as a threat. I don't know. Balances are really going, on now. She's now getting to rewrite her one. You can add Adam Kissinger to that, and add John to that. You can add Paul Ryan to that, all of what was, and it's not just them that need held accountable, journalists too, in how you report. And I'm going to end it with Martha Roundtree. Meet the Press has been in the news for the last couple of weeks. Only fair that I also founded, the creator, and the first host of Meet the Press. And it goes like this. It says, as long as the press of America is free, America will. And what we have tried to do, the press heart of our free press to the whole nation. Let us never forget that information belongs to the American. And is that impress trying each week in the home an informed public wrong, and Meet the Press is dedicated to that cause. I seeking the truth, upholding truth, fighting, and until we get there, I think we're gonna have. But it has been a one inviting me up. Thank you for the well wish DMs. What a great, thank you so much. So
Well, thank you, and I love that because you guys know I say it all the time. A uninformed electorate is a very easy to manipulate and to control. And part of the duty of the fourth estate in media is to help us have that information. And we know that this modern iteration of journalists have not really leaned in to their fourth estate duty. In fact, some of them just straight out run away from it, and they tend to gravitate more toward the infotainment or the access journalism, and that it may do them some good, but it doesn't do the general populace any good. So they really do have an important role to play. I am thankful and grateful to those of them who understand that mission and who stick to it, because a um, a free press, in order to remain free, must also be brave and courageous. And I see very little bravery occurring in our media today. And it is going to be required of them, because they may be okay and getting their paycheck today, but that all stops or changes very drastically once they no longer have the freedom to not do their job, you know. So, and again, the same thing goes with the Republicans, who know the danger that the former guy faces, yet just want to tiptoe up to the line saying he's awful, don't vote for him, but for whatever reason cannot utter the words, support Joe Biden, because this is not a normal election. This is not Democrats and Republicans. This is not red team versus the blue team. This is literally democracy versus autocracy. So until they all lean into actually talking about what's at stake, not the horse race of it all, not the sensationalism of it all, they literally put us all in danger, and themselves, whether they recognize it or not. Again, remember Martin Niemöller. He was very okay with fascism in the beginning, because it wasn't affecting him until it did. And when he spoke out, he was jailed, and then he recognized he was in the find out stage. And that's where some of these folks will find themselves. But I am not willing to let them find out, because they can't find out without all of us finding out and suffering. So we're just going to have to work around them and in spite of them. And I thank you, Danny, for being one of the great voices that helps us to do that. So thank you again for your wonderful contributions to the space today. And you as well, Joseph. And I can't wait for the space that you hold to discuss that, because it is a topic that I do love to talk about. I think it's very important that we talk about it, and that people really, really do understand the dangers and where we are. And as I say, it's not like it can it happen here? Yes, it is happening here. Okay. What we need to do is to stop it from actually taking over. So, again, thank you both. Thank all the wonderful speakers that we had, Mud Puppy, Mark, Ziggy, and I know I'm leaving someone out. That's why I hate to do the name thing. Oh, Tiva.
Bella.
Yeah, Bella, T-Bug, you just have all made the conversation so much richer. And again, we're just going to keep coming here every Monday, making noise and good trouble to continue to inform people in a way that our mainstream media often does not. So I thank you for helping us to carry out that mission. It's so very important. Even those who do not speak, actively speak, you are participating and you are an active part of it just by listening, because I know that you're taking these things in and you're probably taking them into your other circles of influence, whether that's other spaces or in your real life. It's important. It's so important. So, with that, I will give my fabulous co host an opportunity to give us some closing thoughts.
Thank you so much, Miss D. And again, thank you everyone for making this space another great one. I just really want to point your attention to some breaking news. I've retweeted it, but I'm not sure that everybody's paid attention to it. Florida has announced that marijuana and abortion, and I really want to point you to the abortion issue, is on the ballot in November. So I think Republicans keep thinking that it is going to be an issue that kind of dies down or goes away or is not seen as vitally essential and important to women and men in this country. And it's not. It's not going anywhere. And every single time they put it on the ballot, they end up losing more ground. So you know, I have high hopes that Florida will see its way out of the current situation that they are in. And we know it takes years. It doesn't take, it's not, like with the tap of a wand and everything's all made perfect and beautiful. But I know that there are many people in the state and around this country who are fighting to help move these Republican controlled states more towards democracy, and we can't give up that fight at all, not ever. We can't give an inch because they will definitely take a whole mess of miles, not just one. And so I'm just asking everybody to kind of keep your eyes on the news, keep your eyes on your timelines, and watch what your community is retweeting, because there are issues that you might be able to help support in some way, that come up that maybe you weren't aware of. I mean, I know Florida is constantly one of the states that we talk about, North Carolina, Tennessee, but there are many, many more. There's Missouri, there's Minnesota, there's yeah, I mean Ohio. There's plenty of it's really a nationwide attack. It just depends on who's getting hit the hardest that week. So let's just be there to support and get information out to our communities on our timelines as well as in real life, so that people can be aware. And I think that awareness will increase the public's ability to be able to better be informed, and then also to counterattack a lot of misinformation and just bad policy that's happening across the country. I do think that the more people realize how serious and how widespread the attack on democracy is in this country currently, that it will be a wake up call. And I know that people aren't quite ready to start, your average voter is not quite ready to pay attention. We got to kind of start directing them, so maybe they start paying attention earlier, because there are quite a few states that still have primaries for congressional seats. Mine is one of them. I just want to make sure that people are not just aware, but engaged. So that's what I think we do best here in Advocacy Arena, and it's not not a mistake that Ms. D is leading this space, and it's definitely not a mistake that you guys are here supporting the space either. So I just want to say thank you again for making another Monday a wonderful experience for me, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that breaking news. And it is going to be reproductive rights are on the ballot, and it is mobilizing half the population of this country. And so we need to lean into that. And I think that we're like a year more out now. So the effects of these horrible laws have taken hold, and there are stories that are being told, and there are people who are running because of their experience. We have a young lady here who is running for office because she and her family suffered the repercussions of our strict abortion bans, because there are no exceptions. Texas is looks like they want to basically provide the death penalty to women who have abortion or IVF and those kinds of things. And I want people to understand that it just wasn't Jews that the Nazis locked up. Pretty much like Trump, it was anyone that they, began with their political opponents. They also locked up um, people who they didn't feel could contribute to society in a meaningful way, because their idea was like, if you're not able to work, you are not able to contribute to society. In other words, they had no use for you. So eugenics was very much a part of the Nazi agenda. And so a lot of people with disabilities were locked up and killed as well. So again, like I said, this brand of authoritarianism, this DEI thing, these voucher programs and things, the schools, the charter schools have the right to deny kids with learning disabilities and other things. There, as I said, so many things that echo a horrible history that we saw happen in another country, and we certainly don't want to see it take place here. And democracy is under threat globally. And Ukraine is still fighting for their democracy, and their success has an impact on us maintaining um, our democracy. And people know that. So I want to remind people that when the Senate, when they reconvene, they will be addressing the Ukraine funding, and that it is critical that they are supported and funded, because they really are the shield for Western democracy. And Putin knows that, which is why he is there, and he's trying to stay there and to destabilize that democracy, so that he can destabilize and undo European democracy. There is just a desire and a global way to do away with democracies, and to take on these authoritarian governments, not just here, but across the globe. Argentina, Haiti. We talk about these things all the time, so we need to, again, like I said, keep in mind what's at stake, what we're dealing with. Israel is, of course, continuing with the Hamas, war, whatever you want to call it there. And, their leader is very much like the former guy. and he is, I think he underwent a hernia surgery maybe yesterday, and the people in the streets, including the families of the hostages, are now out in the street in by the thousands, demanding a new election, demanding that he resign. So we need to keep an eye on those things and do everything that we can, um, where we can, to support candidates who have decided to run, who are brave enough to put their hat in the ring and do what we can from where we can, whether that is just amplifying their tweets so that they have more name recognition and exposure, contributing financially to their campaign, assisting with phone banking, text banking, or postcard writing. It is so important. And I know that people, we all want to win, but sometimes it's not just about like winning a race. Like here in my state, Blue Tennessee, we are encouraging that people to run so that there is no unopposed Republicans in this state, because 44 of the districts of our 99 ran unopposed. The Republicans, they just walked into the seat. And what happens when this occurs is it allows for them to be as extreme as they want to be. And this is what they have done. When they have opposition, it forces more transparency and it forces more accountability. And then morally, we know that, people tend to think, oh, Tennessee is red, but I'm from Tennessee, that, I'm a Democrat. I vote Democratic. So not everyone in all of these red states are Republicans. And a lot of it looks that way because of gerrymandering and other things. So every citizen deserves a candidate to vote for, whether their candidate actually wins or not. So, morally, it's just wrong that people don't have another choice. And then electorally, what happens is that when you do have an opponent, beyond it providing more transparency and accountability, because it forces them to have conversations, it forces them to suss out their plans. And sometimes citizens who are just not informed and engaged, so they don't know the plans that some of these people have for them. And so when they're forced to have these conversations, it becomes clearer, so then that they understand that their rights and their livelihood is threatened, or could be threatened in ways that they maybe didn't foresee. So just keep having the conversations that you're doing, participate. I have joined several of the DNC training programs to help with phone banking and other things. There are just so many opportunities for us as citizens to be involved in the process. And again, I say our democracy is only strengthened by our own individual involvement in it. And it's going to require all of us. And as I said last week, I was a bit depressed by all of the autocratic things that were passing in our legislature, not the least of which was basically dismantling the board of TSU, but they also passed essentially a show me your papers law, so that it gives the local law enforcement more rights, and emboldens them to stop people they think are immigrants, to call ICE, to lock them up. So as again, I say, it's not if fascism gets here, it is here. It is now upon us to stop it from spreading and from growing deeper roots. So I'm just begging all of you to do what you can, where you can, to ensure that that doesn't happen. And if you live in a very, very safe blue state or blue area, do what you can to help support other people's, other candidates, and their efforts in areas where it is not so safely blue. And remind you all that, most states are blue until they're not. And if you stop participating and being actively engaged, then it's likely it could turn at any point. So just be engaged, do whatever you can to stay informed and to help inform others. And I want to leave you with this hopefulness, which I went back to many times last week because it was really heartbreaking to see what was happening. These are the encouraging words from the late great Representative John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. So never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. So I just want to thank you all for coming in, making noise with Soul Sister and I, and getting in good trouble, and encourage you to continue to raise your voice to speak to the issues of what is at stake and make good trouble. And I'm wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week, and leave you with peace and blessings.